across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Thursday afternoon. Mandatory digital IDs, that is what the government is proposing. We've got reaction from Ivan Sampson, an immigration lawyer, who thinks that this could actually help solve immigration in our country. We'll speak to Tom Jones as well in a second, the Conservative commentator. Lots to discuss. I want your views on this as well. This is a major change from the government. They've talked about it before, but now they want to do it. Would you accept a digital ID? What should it stop you or in fact enable you to do? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Starmer under pressure. Another communications chief goes this afternoon. Steph Driver, she's been with him through thick and thin for the last 4 years. Now she has abandoned ship. Andy Burnham says that MPs want him to challenge Starmer. He's attacked Keir Starmer as divisive. This is just before the Labour conference comes up in Liverpool next week. We'll talk about the two-child benefit cap as well. Cabinet ministers say they want to lift that. We'll talk to Matt Vickers for the Conservatives. We'll talk to Graham Stringer for Labour. A number of Labour MPs thinking that he might go actually to allow Andy Burnham to stand in a by-election, but of course Reform UK would throw the kitchen sink at that. Speed camera cash should be given to police forces to catch more drivers. What do you think about that? Even a bigger crackdown on speeding drivers. We'll get the sport. We'll talk as well to Will Barker from The Sun. And UK cod rationing could mean that one fish supper is available for every 1,200 people. Yes, really, I had a fish supper the other night and I would be very annoyed if I couldn't have one of those. Hopefully this is a story that is only codding us and not a true story. What do you think about all of this? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can get your call on the air between now and 7 o'clock. As always, we've loads of guests, but I want to get your views on the air. You are at least as important, if not more important, than the guests we have in the studio and down the line. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter, or X as no one calls it. You can also send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 here on Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company this Thursday afternoon. I can see the phones going already on the big issue, the announcement from the government this afternoon that digital IDs are going ahead. This is every adult in Britain forced to carry a new digital ID under fresh plans from Sir Keir Starmer. He's expected to use a speech in London tomorrow to back the so-called Brit Card scheme in a bid to smash illegal migration. We've had loads of different policies over the last sort of 8 weeks or so from the government. Will this one work? Well, Tom Jones is with us, the Conservative commentator. He's a councillor for the party in Scotland, Lower Wensleydale. And Ivan Sampson is an immigration lawyer in the studio with us. Ivan, perhaps I can start with you. Will this work? What do you think?
I think it could work. This is nothing new. In December 2024, the government brought in digital e-visas, and they've been very successful. So it makes it very easy for an employer to get a share code from an employee, and they can check instantly whether someone has a right to work. So you can't have fraudulent documents, and that's really important. The digital IDs, we have approximately, Conservative estimates, between 700,000 and 1 million people in this country who've either overstayed their visas or entered the UK illegally. Nobody's talking about that. I know the people are talking about channel crossings, but they are a small fraction of the number of people already here. And so no governments have made any inroads into address that problem.
I know what's going to happen, and be going through the thoughts of some of our viewers and listeners, not all of them, but some of our viewers and listeners right now. There will be someone, perhaps a little bit on in years, perhaps someone who doesn't grasp technology that well, who will say, why should I have to have a digital ID? Because there are people who are breaking the law, who come into our country illegally, who haven't contributed to this country, who shouldn't be accessing services, but who are. Why should I be penalised? Why should I have an extra thing? And why should I have to prove my identity? Especially if I was born here, if I've paid my taxes and contributed. What would you say to that person?
Look, I understand people's concerns. It's a thin end of the wedge, and there may be more intrusions into your liberties and your freedom. But I think we've got to give it a try. The number of people here unlawfully is a serious problem, and digital IDs will address that. It could be a pilot scheme. They could run it for a year or two and see how it goes, but we've got to do something. And if that's the only thing that you can object is, oh, my freedom is being eroded, well, it isn't, because all you're doing is proving your identity, which you have to do in many places anyway. If you go to a pub, you've got to prove how old you are. If you know, it's something we're used to already. So,
Tom Jones is with us, Conservative commentator and Conservative councillor. Tom, what do you make of this? What do you think of this idea?
Well, I think Ivan is right. It certainly is an old idea. Tony Blair has finally got what he wanted. I think fundamentally, why should Brits surrender a new imposition on their liberty to make up for the failure of a government that is simply not doing the necessary to control the system? I think they
may argue that it's not just them over the last 14 months, but actually 14 years of the Conservatives that failed to get a grip of this, your party.
Yeah, and they'd be right. But I think Ivan is right to point out that we have a huge number of people who are living here illegally, but the government is not currently using its powers to crack down on those people anyway. 90% of hand car washes, it's well known, are employing people on illegal contracts.
How do you know that? Where does that statistic come from?
That, I believe, comes from the Car Wash Association.
How can you know if people are working illegally? I'm sure there are many people who work at car washes, in barber shops, and many different outlets, nail bars as well. We know they are often involving people who aren't here legally. But we can't know that for sure, can we? If they're here illegally by its very nature.
Well, that's true, but that's the figure from car wash estimates. But we don't see large-scale crackdowns on sectors that we know are a problem. We see shows of strength of force from the government, but no real systemic crackdown to tackle these issues.
Ivan, what do you make of the story of the person who was given asylum in this country? He came across in a dinghy, an Afghanistan, a person from Afghanistan who was given asylum in the UK, who went on an 8-week holiday to the country that he had fled. We know there are some people who have been given a form of asylum in regard to Ukraine, who go back to Ukraine. If it's dangerous, why on earth are you holidaying there? If you've got to have asylum from that country, surely you shouldn't be going back there.
Indeed, and if you do go back, then there's no longer a risk to you. Mm-hmm. So what the government can do, the Home Office do, is they start an investigation on the risk to that person in that country. And if it's assessed that the risk no longer exists, why? Because that person is there, then their asylum status can be revoked.
Should they have to? Should they have to launch an investigation? Surely if you are given, if you're given asylum from a country and you set foot on their soil, again, voluntarily, surely it's really straightforward.
It should be, but you have to remember there always has to be a fair process, otherwise it'll get challenged in the courts. Everything in every decision has to have an investigation and a fair process. If you make an arbitrary decision as to why that person is there, then I'm afraid that could be challenged in the court. So there always has to be an investigation.
Sean has been in touch from Bridlington. He says, what's the point in using digital ID to identify illegal immigrants if the government won't deport them, says Sean. What do you think of that, Sean? Ivan?
That's the biggest problem. Look, once somebody's here and we don't know where they're from, no identification, we've got to then conduct investigations of where they come from, and let's just say they come from Yemen. We have no returns agreement with Yemen. So people know once they get here, they're not leaving. That is a problem. And nobody's come up with a solution. The Tories came up with the Rwanda scheme, which was struck down because it was deemed to be unlawful. But what the court said was they didn't actually strike down the scheme itself. What they said, not Rwanda. So I think there is room for a scheme of removal to a third country. Mm-hmm. That's acceptable to the courts.
We're being asked as well, Tom, Clive has said, how are digital identity cards going to stop the small boats? Do you think they will, or do you think this will have any impact, Tom?
No, I don't think it will have much impact on channel migration. I think one of the issues there is a lack of documentation from the channel migrants, which sometimes is because these people are coming from war-torn areas where they might have genuinely lost their ID, or there are non-functioning government systems, like in, say, somewhere like Syria until recently. And sometimes they deliberately throw away their ID because they don't want to be identified. Now, we could have a system in which incoming migrants are by force given an ID, but again there are gaps in the system where they will be able to, for instance, hire an account to work on somewhere like Deliveroo, and they'll still be able to illegally work, so there will still be those pull factors.
Well, that's a fair point, Ivan, isn't it? When people don't have documentation, can't prove where they come from. I mean, I can prove where I come from. I have ID, I have a passport and a driving licence, as I expect you do as well. But if you have someone who has no document, you've got to take their word for it. How do you square that circle, or can you?
You know, look, I think the Home Office is well aware. Countries like Somalia back in the 90s, there were quite a few Ethiopians coming across pretending to be Somalis. And what the government do is carry out an assessment, asking questions about their country, the political, the social, geographic questions. They also look at experts. This all costs money. And this is the problem. We've got experts that can assess somebody's accent. There's AI now can do that. So if enough money's thrown at this, we can determine where somebody's from. But it needs a political will and funding to do that.
I just want to talk about what Boris Johnson has been saying about this as well. He's been talking to Harry Cole for Harry's programme, Harry Cole Saves the West, and he's talked about illegal immigration driving the public nuts. It drives me nuts too, Boris Johnson said. What do you make of those comments, Tom?
Well, frankly, I think they're quite incredible coming from Boris Johnson, who, you know, frankly, absolutely turbocharged our immigration system. I think one of the interesting things that nobody's really talking about is that I think one of the reasons that the public quite often overestimate the scale of illegal migration versus legal migration is that the lowering of entry criteria that happened under Boris Johnson, the criteria was lowered to such a degree that I think most people think that many people who are here legally simply can't be here legally, because they can't possibly imagine that the government would allow them to be here. So frankly, I think it's a staggering comment from a man who bears as much responsibility as anybody else.
Are you in the right party, Tom? You seem to be disagreeing with an awful lot of what their policy has been in the past.
Well, it's an open question, and one I start every day with.
Okay. Ivan, very interesting. Will in Oxford says, Penny is dropping digital ID, so why import so many migrants? Well, you could give them digital ID, place them in specific constituencies ready for the next general election, then you'll need your digital ID to vote. Well, it would take longer than that, wouldn't it, to actually get the vote? Terry in Frinton says, digital ID, how dare they? Surely a human rights issue, and it won't stop illegal immigration. And Sam says, what's the point of putting ID on your phone? We already have everything on there. It'll just get nicked by one of the many criminals. I mean, there are many problems that people have identified already with this system. Will it help at all? Do you think could it help in some way?
You go to Tesco's, okay, and you want to buy food at Tesco's. If you haven't got a digital ID, you can't. The system could be to that extent that unless you have an ID, digital ID, you cannot buy and sell anything. And I'm afraid it'll be very difficult. I mean, Theresa May started this, make it a hostile environment for immigrants. Well, we need to have that sort of attitude to catch these people. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I protect human rights. That's what I do as a lawyer. But I have absolutely no respect for anyone who enters the UK and then overstays their visa. I have no respect for that, and I will not protect them.
Okay, Ivan, thank you. That's Ivan Sampson, immigration lawyer there, and Tom Jones joining us as well, Conservative commentator and Conservative councillor. Lots to discuss. What do you think in all of this? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about all the big political stories of the day. I definitely want to take a call on digital IDs. We'll do that straight after the break. Stay with us here on Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, lots of people getting in touch on digital ID. Molly says, good afternoon, Peter. I really don't understand how digital ID will stop illegal migration. It's about controlling British people. We have no idea who these immigrants are, so how can we ID them? We've had a voice note as well. You can send these in on WhatsApp. Tiz has this to say.
I would suspect it's better to find an alternative route rather than an ID on all UK citizens, but more for illegal immigrants or people that come to this country without any proper paperwork in place, not with existing residents. We do not need the government trying to creep in civil liberties. That's my view on it.
Tiz, thank you for that. Send your voice notes in on 0344 499 1000. Daniel's in Epsom. He's rung that number to get his voice on the air in a phone call. Daniel, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you think about digital IDs?
Peter, I can tell you right now that the British majority will not stand for digital ID. I certainly won't, and I think I speak for the majority of British people out there. Just because successive governments haven't been able to do what we've asked them to do, right, over a 20 or a 30-year period, does not mean that the British people have to suffer digital IDs. Listen, we've been telling successive governments for a long time, okay, that we wanted illegal immigration stopped completely and legal immigration cut down to extremely low numbers. Now, they could have just done what we asked them to do, Peter,
correct.
couldn't they? Instead of coming up with harebrained schemes and infringing on my personal freedoms.
Well, how does it infringe on your personal freedoms, Daniel? Why are you worried about that aspect of things?
I am worried about it because they just shut down in Vietnam 86 million bank accounts because that's on all accounts that won't have biometric data. It's happening all around the world, but in this country, we're born free. When I was a kid, we'd say to each other, it's a free country. Well, under Labour, it's not anymore. And I can tell you now, the British majority will not stand for it, Pete. And what they should do is just cut all this out, all this nonsense, and do what... Listen, we have to remember the people out there, that this government and the last one, they work for us. They should be doing our bidding, and they should be doing what the majority of Britons wish and want. And this Labour government seems to be diametrically opposed to the views and opinions of the British majority on virtually every issue. And I can tell you now, on digital ID, people aren't going to stand for it.
Okay.
My children's future, Peter, and my children's future's freedom is something that I'm very happy to fight for, okay? And I'm telling this government and all these little people you have on, people aren't in this country. We're not going to stand for it, and I will not let you impinge on my children's freedoms in the future.
We're hearing that loudly and clearly, Daniel. Thanks for that. I want to get the political context now from Ryan Saby. He's Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor of The Sun. Ryan, big announcement this afternoon. Where's it come from? Why now?
I think the push has come to shove with Sir Keir Starmer, and I think he's got to come up with every which way to tackle illegal migration. And I think he sees this as one of those sort of key areas. So I think what will happen is when you go to apply for a new job, you'll have to show this digital ID, and that will be one way of cracking down on it. Employers will have to see that you have this digital ID card. Now, this is going to create a lot of civil liberty arguments, and as I heard just there now,
Yeah, you just heard them from Daniel there.
Yeah, I just heard from him, very, very angry. I think Downing Street are probably banking on people already putting lots of their their personal information over to social media sites, or handing over to, the banks have lots of details, the government already have lots of details, the NHS already have lots of details. If this is just one extra thing that the government can have in their armoury to try and solve illegal migration, they are going to go for it.
Are they banking on the fact that to have a new job, to be employed for something, I've actually just been employed for something in addition to this job, I must say, and I've had to show my passport in order to do that. Given that there are some restrictions already, is the gamble by the government simply that people will put up with this because it's only for one or two things at the moment? But the worry many people will have is the sort of slippery slope idea that actually this is going to be something which comes into all aspects of life, and you can't do things like, you know, buy or sell goods without it, and that actually many people who've done absolutely nothing wrong will be on the right side of this and will have to show and prove their identity, whereas people who've done the wrong thing will simply get away with it or somehow subvert the system.
Yeah, I also think the government actually, just to move on from that point there, is that I think the debate has moved on a lot from 25 years ago when Tony Blair was thinking about bringing this in. So I think combined with everything, combined with the problem on illegal migration, it feels like the government have got no choice. As you say, you went for a new job. You have to show something. I mean, companies have to see some sort of identification. They have to see a passport. They have to see a national insurance card anyway. Companies, government, the NHS hold so much information on us. And I just remember during COVID where people were signing up to the NHS and, you know, to get the jabs, that they were handing over a lot of information. The NHS already holds a lot of information on us. So I think also polling wise, this idea seems to be doing very well. So I know there'll be lots of people who will be against it, but there's a vast, you know, majority in the country who are for it.
Very interesting.
And I think, it's one of these civil liberty debates that are going to run and run. But I think that debate has sort of moved on a little bit over the last 25 years.
Okay, interesting thoughts there, Ryan. We'll debate all of that throughout the rest of the programme and beyond. If you want to give me a ring about it, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk about another one of Keir Starmer's problems. First of all, one of his communications chiefs, Steph Driver, she's gone, she's left. Also, Andy Burnham, the leader in Manchester, the mayor of Greater Manchester, he has talked yet again, somehow managed to give an interview. He does this weekly, apparently, with BBC Radio Manchester. This is what he has said this morning.
MPs were in touch with me, but let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
Yes, it's not my decision, says Andy Burnham. Well, if you want to be an MP and you want to be a leader of the Labour Party, surely you have some agency there. I mean, this is just not really credible from Andy Burnham.
Yeah, no, Andy Burnham has spent the last 2 or 3 days giving interviews, one to the New Statesman, one to the Daily Telegraph, and he wants to be part of that conversation of where the Labour Party goes next. And he's putting himself front and centre of being a challenger, a contender when it comes to whoever is going to take over from Sir Keir Starmer. And the way he's talking, he's not hosing this down. He thinks that should happen sooner rather than later. Now, I think the interesting thing is that when, you know, the likes of me and you head up to Liverpool in the coming days, is just to judge the mood of the Labour delegates, the Labour MPs, senior ministers, cabinet ministers, of exactly where this is. Does Sir Keir Starmer actually have a little bit of time to turn things round, whether it's the economy, whether it's small boats, whether it's legal migration, or has it just reached such a stage that they just want to get rid of him here and now? Now, I think he's got a little bit of time. He's only been in office for a year, and I think to get rid of him right now, despite the disquiet, despite people telling Andy Burnham that they want him to stand, Keir Starmer has a bit of time on his hands. I think that conversation will be had next year. Whether they actually lose patience with him, but I think he's got several months left. Yeah,
I agree with you, Ryan. I think at least until the Scottish, Welsh and local elections, that will be the time perhaps when people have a bit of a chat about him, and maybe even Kemi Badenoch as well. The Conservatives, of course, have their conference in Manchester. I'm heading up there as well. So really interesting in all of that. I just want to talk about Boris Johnson as well. He's been talking to your colleague Harry Cole, who is in his new programme, Harry Cole Saves the West. Let's just have a little bit of a look about what Boris Johnson has been saying about his concerns about Nigel Farage.
You know, my concerns, as I say, and they're serious concerns, are about the approach to the economy of the Reform Party and the approach on national security. And I think both of those will be severely tested in the years ahead, and people will actually want serious answers. And I think that the answers are going to be Conservative answers.
Well, Nigel Farage was asked about this himself. Fairly brief, pithy reply, one might say.
Mr. Farage and Boris Johnson, he's branded you extremely dangerous and said he has anxieties on your position on Russia. What's your response?
Poor old Boris. Sad, isn't it, really?
Brutal in its brevity. Ryan, what did you make of all that?
Yeah, no, great interview that Harry Cole did with Boris Johnson. I think it goes to the crux of the matter, and Nigel Farage is probably going to come up with a serious game plan again when it comes to the economy and national security. And I remember, in recent months over the last year, there have been questions over his links to or his fondness for over Russia. Now, I think he's probably got an answer for that, but the trouble is opponents will just keep on throwing mud at him, and they'll continue to do that as long as he's got that poll lead. But he's off to he's been off to the Bank of England today, and I think that's another card that they need to show, that whether they've got an answer to actually solving the issues around the economy and having a serious plan for all these issues. So I think that's where the next year or so, Reform have really got to sort of step up their game, because the closer we get to that election, the more scrutiny that will be applied to them.
Ryan, fantastic analysis as always. I would have asked you a question about the Labour deputy leadership contest, but I'm afraid it's just too boring. We'll chat again soon, no doubt. Thank you to Jeremy. He says Ivan must be the most naive commentator on Talk Today if he believes that the government, police, etc. will not abuse the system. Then history proves him horribly wrong. Sam says there should be a referendum on this, as it's a fundamental infringement to your civil liberties. Only foreigners should have digital ID. Marcus says, I honestly hope this digital ID is a step too far and seals the fate of Keir Starmer. I really hope this is a ploy to get him gone. That's Marcus in Exeter then. Steve in East Yorkshire says, how are the government going to make us have and carry a digital ID card? I won't have one. Why? Because Tony Blair has been advocating for digital ID for years, and if Blair wants them, Blair stands to benefit. It is a big no from me, says Steve. Adrian in Somerset has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Adrian, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hello, Mr. Cardwell. I hope you're well.
Very well, thanks. Hope you are too.
I'm good, thanks. I don't have an issue with having an ID card, because there's enough information about us out there without us knowing anyway. Okay? Driving licence, NHS, blah, 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 blah. They know more about us than what we think anyway, so having an ID card, not a problem. What I want to know is if you don't have, I'm assuming that your ID is going to be on your smartphone. Now, for people who don't have a smartphone, they're going to have a hard copy.
Yeah.
All right? They're going to have a hard copy. How long is that hard copy last for before it has an expiration date, and who pays for it to be renewed?
Well, exactly. And also, if additional information is put on there, let's say you have another piece of information that needs to be put on there, will the same QR code work or whatever? I think this is highly discriminatory to people who don't, there are something like 2 million people who don't have internet access in their home. Okay, they can go to the local library, but there's a member of my family who is a very, very good person, who, very law-abiding citizen, who would struggle, honestly, would struggle with the digital ID. And why should that person, and why should many, many other people simply have to put up with this and deal with this through no fault of theirs?
Yeah, but it's that hard copy, like your driving licence. You've got to have your photo renewed, and you've got your expiration date on there. You've got 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, isn't it? But then also, how well is this going to work? Because the last time they tried to do something like this across the nation was for COVID, for the COVID app. And how much did they spend on that? And nothing came of it. And it went completely wrong.
Completely agree, Adrian. Those are really, really good points, and thank you for them. I see Adrian in Somerset there. Let's play on a couple of other voice notes on this topic. This is what you want to talk about today. And yeah, this is my show, but it's your show too. You want to talk about digital IDs? We'll talk about digital IDs. David has sent this voice note. This is what he says.
Hey, it's David from Watford. I think digital ID is the worst thing that this government can do. They don't want to do anything about the border. They don't want to do anything about the migrant crisis. They let it happen. And now the British people have to suffer. We can end up looking like North Korea, China, places like that. I don't want to be in the digital prison. I am scared. There's many people that don't want this.
Neil has some thoughts on this as well. He sent us a voice note. Go ahead, Neil.
So digital ID, I'm ex-military, had absolutely no problem carrying ID for years. For 23 years I was in the military. In fact, it was quite useful lots of times. I have recently lived in the Middle East as well, where digital IDs are required. And you know what? It just makes things work. Yes, there is, of course, the opportunity for a government to close you down and debank you and all those things. But you know what? Don't do things wrong in the first place. For the 99.999% of the population, digital IDs would be fantastic. They really would.
Very interesting to hear that from Neil. But then Nigel Farage got debanked. Did he do anything wrong, or did he just fall foul of the views of the people within Coots? Very, very interesting thoughts on all of that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Loads of time to discuss this between now and 7. More messages coming in every minute. Marge says, why should we pay the consequences for their mistakes? No to digital ID. And an interesting thought from Graham and Bushy here. He says, what will the penalty be for not having a digital ID? Probably 31 months in jail, and we know he was sentenced to that, don't we? Seb Charlton is with us in a second. He is their digital and communications manager. No doubt he'll have a view on this, as well as the two-child benefit cap, which the Labour says they want to lift. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts. Plenty to discuss today. Big news day, lots happening. Stay with Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including on Twitter. I'll read out some of those in a minute or two. Ross says, absolute joke, this ID card. I will refuse it. Immigrants have no ID when they get here. They can just make a name up for their ID. I'd rather go to jail. Mark in Hebburn says, digital visas already exist for migrants and for illegal migrants. I don't trust the government to hold this power over the rest of us. It will mean any dissenting voice watched and freedoms taken away. Don't forget Canada and Trudeau lost freezing bank accounts of the anti-lockdown truckers and supporters. That's right, and people who wouldn't take the vaccine as well. Absolutely disgraceful. Sam in Croydon says, once more the majority have to pay the price because of what a minority of illegal immigrants have done to this country. Natasha, who's in Switzerland, says, I can't see the digital ID being a big mess or misused, especially by this completely competent government. I don't think. Trevor in Harrow, question to you, Peter. what we know so far, do we have an accepted digital ID? I work in aviation and have an ID anyway, but like the COVID ID, I won't accept it. No doubt I will lose my job. The government let immigration and unregistered people get out of hand. This government has finally had its poll tax moment. Should tell you as well, an hour ago, more than an hour ago, we were talking about this on Talk. In fact, it broke on the Sun at 23 minutes past 3, and immediately afterwards we were talking about it. Ian Collins was talking about it. In the last 4 minutes, I've got a breaking news alert from the BBC at 34 minutes past 4, just during the break there, saying that there is breaking news that digital IDs may be proposed by the government. Yeah, maybe you should just stick with us for breaking news because we get it first. Let's talk to Seb Charlton. He is spokesman and digital communications manager for the Adam Smith Institute. Seb, we're definitely going to talk about disability benefits. We're going to talk about lifting the two-child benefit cap. Those are things we've asked you to come on about. But just before we do, what are your initial thoughts on this breaking story about digital IDs? What's your take on it?
Well, I think I'm going to wait and see what the proposals are specifically, but the kind of outcry about it shows that I think we just got this sense that there's a government that's interfering more and more in our daily lives. I think after the Online Safety Act, where people have to register and give private companies their sensitive data just to kind of use legitimate sites, there's just this sense that the government's regulating more and more of what we can do. Also when it comes to, purchasing cigarettes or alcohol as well. So I do think it's worrying, and I can totally understand why people feel so concerned by that and feel like the UK is sliding into a more authoritarian system. So, I'll wait and look at the details of the proposals, but it does feel like our civil liberties are increasingly under threat.
Tell us what we asked you to come on about, Seb, which is about Cabinet Ministers recommending lifting the two-child benefit cap. We know this would cost about £3 billion. £3 billion the government doesn't have.
Yes. I mean, I completely empathise with people who want to tackle child poverty, but this is not the way to do it. I think, first off, the IFS have shown that it's actually not going to have an impact on school readiness or on long-term outcomes. And as well as that, we have a benefits bill that's totally out of control in this country. I mean, right now we've got 600,000 people, and rising, claiming benefits for anxiety and depression. And although I'm sure some of those people do feel like and do have a genuine mental illness, we've created a system where more and more people get trapped in this cycle of benefits and don't get into work. Just as another fact, in cities like Birmingham, 25% of the working age population are on out-of-work benefits. So we can't afford this system where fewer and fewer people are actually contributing and making a difference.
But can Labour actually do anything about it? Because they have a huge majority, but as we've seen previously with the welfare reform, they tried to bring in saving £5 billion. They can't do it, can they? Because they don't have the political will, and they also don't have those on the backbenches who will actually back them up in all of this. They're hamstrung by this. Rachel Reeves has to save a load of money, but it's very, very difficult for her to do it because her own party won't support her.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for businesses and anyone who's trying to invest and work. Totally. Yeah, when you have a kind of a budget and a system that isn't making sense. I think the government's initial reforms that it unfortunately was unable to pass probably didn't go far enough. Even if they'd passed, the benefits bill would still continue to skyrocket. I mean, it's projected to reach insane levels. By 2030, the average taxpayer will be spending £3,000 to fund welfare of their pay, which is just an insane figure. Unfortunately, I don't think Labour would be able to pass a bill scrapping this anyway, because their political party is so fractured right now.
Although Reform UK as well say they want to lift the two-child benefit cap. It'll be interesting to see how the Conservatives react to this as well. Seb, thank you. That's Seb Charlton there, spokesman and digital communications manager for the Adam Smith Institute think tank. Loads on digital ID. Dave says I have a birth certificate. That tells me what country I am from. Colin says digital ID, that would provide a black market explosion. Illegal immigrants will always be employable by unscrupulous employers like the food delivery companies. Well, we know some of them anyway have done a few things about that, but I still from time to time get deliveries from those kind of companies from people who do not look the same as the picture. Sam says, why should I have to have ID because the government can't do their job and deal with immigration? I would rather leave the country than trust this government, says Sam, with digital ID. They're too authoritarian. It is not as it is now, and I don't trust them not to get worse. Glenn in Colchester texts to say, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon. afternoon, Glenn. In principle, I have absolutely no issue with digital ID. Unfortunately, I would oppose it as I have absolutely no trust in the government to utilise the information in a positive way. Would it stop immigration? Only if we were willing and able to deport all of those that didn't have one. Marcus says, how many more Williams will this cost? The cost caused by illegals, remember, it's just a way to keep an eye on us. Nick says, in the words of the great REM, it's the end of the world as we now know it. Digital ID will do nothing to stop illegal immigration. What it will do eventually, it'll stop you flying, driving, smoking, drinking, meeting up with people and voicing an opinion. Leave Britain now, it's game over, says Nick. Well, that's not you in the corner, that's you in the spotlight there. James says, I carry my driving licence at all times. I have my passport with me at work. The only thing a digital ID will do is monitor my life, and I'm a free man, not a number. If people without ID are working now, then how will having a digital ID make any difference? You carry your driving licence at all times? Yeah, I suppose mine's in my wallet. I don't have my passport with me, I must say, but I don't do the job that James does. I don't know what that job is. Phil and Darby says, I'm on the fence around ID. Apart from the immigration benefits, I can see positives around helping the police identifying and catching general criminals, says Phil. Well, what side of the argument are you on? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We're going to take a load of your calls about this after the break. I want to get your voice on the air. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. Loads of people on Twitter have just been looking at some of the messages during the break there. Eddie says, digital ID is a hacker's dream. All my personal information in one place, oven ready to have my identity and my life hijacked, plus ever more overreach by the state monitoring my moves, my spending, my thoughts too. Andy says, I use a push-button disability phone. Yes, Nokia released one that works on 4G after the 3G switch off. And privacy with no apps, how's that going to work? I'm in my 60s. Will I be stopped from buying meat or booze without showing ID? Another person says, did your digital ID supporting human rights lawyer you have on say you won't be able to buy or sell unless you have ID? He literally quoting the book of Revelations. I think it's chapter 13 of Revelations, which I used to scare myself with as a kid. Yes, really. I think that is what he was quoting there, but I'm not sure he was doing so entirely seriously. Andy says, I agree with Daniel and Epsom. This will be another poll tax issue. Angela says, how long before the government identify who they believe are far right and shut down their banking access, etc.? I'm sorry, but my trust in Labour is zero. I deleted my NHS app and will not comply with this mandatory digital ID. If they asked us and we had a vote, then fair enough. Will the king have to have one, says one person. Simon says, is that an ID card or an ID on your phone? Will you have to have an expert who can tell us whether it will be foolproof? It's supposedly a digital ID. Arthur says, lifting the two-child benefit cap won't actually reduce child poverty. Child poverty levels as a percentage haven't really changed since 1997, irrespective of child benefit or not. And David says, this has nothing to do with immigration. This is the excuse to introduce digital ID. Just say no. What comes next? What does it link to? The question is, do you trust politicians of any party? Well, let's ask that question to Dan in Lancashire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dan, do you trust politicians to implement this properly, fairly, honestly?
Not really, Peter, not at all. I mean, I'm ex-armed forces. I carried an ID for many years, as some of your callers have said. I don't really have a problem, but then it's a question of how far it links into your personal life. Mm-hmm. Now, if it's just an ID card like they carry in France, a piece of paper, don't have a problem with it. But if you're going to start putting all my banking details on it, and I don't believe it's going to be on a mobile phone, it will be a card that'll be electronic. It'll be like a bank card. It'll be scannable. They can be copied, they can be duplicated. And
well, even the digital IDs can be duplicated as well.
Yep,
what I'm worried about, Dan, is putting all the data together, is saying, you know, I don't want my doctor knowing what I eat, for example. He can ask me if he wants to, but I don't want all the information there. And suddenly you're in Tesco and they say, well, you've had quite a lot of red meat already this month, maybe you should cut down a bit. I don't want that. I don't want people to know all the details. Everybody has things they don't want in the public domain. Everybody has things they don't want certain people to know about how they spend, what they spend, where they spend their time, who they spend it with. Privacy is a big, big issue, and that's what I'm worried about, Dan.
Not a problem. I mean, if you limit the card to, am I entitled to benefits in this country because I'm a law-abiding, I'm a lawful citizen resident here? Am I entitled to NHS care? Not a problem. Why does it have to have my bank details on it? Why should anybody be able to say, who do you bank with and what are your eating preferences? I shouldn't have to produce it to shop at Tesco.
Do you trust the government to do that limited scheme, though? Do you think it'll... The thing is, as well, I know what'll happen. They'll say, well, it's only a couple of things, and then another government will come in and increase it.
It will expand. It's like when they put up ANPR, they put up cameras to monitor the high street in the evening, say, look, it's for in just case people are having a fight, and then all of a sudden you find the cameras are facing the other way because they're now looking at registration plates on cars and looking at tax details.
Yeah.
It always starts out small and gets bigger.
Very good points there, Dan. Thank you for that. Thanks also to another tweeter who says, I already have a passport and a driving licence, which I've held for over 50 years. Why should I comply with the left-wing government who are continuing the Tory globalist plan and ferrying in thousands of unwanted immigrants as well? Another person says, we have national insurance numbers, passports, etc. Why do they need more ID? Lots of thoughts on this. Sean says it's worse than that. It's about farming as much data as possible about the electorate in one place. You remember Brown and Blair in the early 2000s going for ID cards. This is it, simply repackaged. Mart says, do OAPs need digital IDs as we are not looking for a job? That's a very good point as well. Is it just to do with jobs? Another person says, to me, it seems the intention was to let illegal migration get to a state that it is so bad that the argument for ID cards has become more amenable to the population in general. They are not for me. Louise is in Kent. Louise, you're on the air. What would you like to say? Thanks for your call.
Yeah, just a couple of things, actually. The first thing about the digital ID, I tell you what they could do to start with. We already know that they can't keep track of people who've overstayed their visas in here.
Yep.
So get on top of that first. And how about everybody who comes into this country on visa or illegally, they get digital IDs to start with before all of us. So that's the first bit. So there's that one. For me, I mean, what happens if you don't have a smartphone, for starters?
Yeah.
Because there are many
or
who
don't want a smartphone, or have a smartphone, but you only want it to do basic things. There's a member of my family, for example, who uses it to make calls, occasionally Google things, and use WhatsApp. That person doesn't want it for anything else. Not interested in any other apps.
And I've taken, I don't want to know the, I won't have the NHS app on either.
Yep.
So I won't have that. And actually, I don't use my mobile phone generally because I know the mental health team phoned me one day and they said, can we have a word with you? I said, no, you flipping well can't. I'm standing in the middle of the till dial in the supermarket, because there's this assumption that if you've got your phone with you, you're obtainable all the time.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point.
So there's that bit. But for me as well, I was going to talk about the anxiety bit as well, if I...
Go for it, Louise. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I have had a very, very long journey in mental health services. I've come out the other side. I've come off all meds, went through 5 years, 4 years of withdrawal. It's taken me 5 years. Now, when that happens, your anxiety, because the meds suppress everything so much that your anxiety just goes through the roof. Now, we are living in a world, I sometimes feel I've woken up in a nightmare, because we're living in a very, very scary and frightening world. And so for me, actually, with anxiety generally, certainly in primary care, if you are seeing the GP for your anxiety, as far as I'm concerned, generally that will be mostly for people who are dealing with rubbish in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think if you're off sick for that, it should be fairly time limited, because you don't need years off for that.
I don't know what you feel about this, particularly in regard to work, Louise, but I have anxiety and depression. I've been on pills for it for years, for over 10 years. It's something that I take pills for every single morning, and they're reviewed, every 6 months or so. I find going to work helps me. If I feel down, going to work, because I'm with creative people, with interesting people. I hear things. It helps. It helps me.
Actually, for me, they took my career away from me at the age of 24 and said I would never work again. I was a physio, which destroyed me. I fought for 20 years to get back to work, and eventually I went back to work as a bagpacker in the supermarket before I got the confidence to be till trained. And then I went on, I built the peer services here in Kent, etc., etc. So for me, getting back to work was the thing that changed my life.
Yes.
I could never work full-time. I couldn't do that because I'd had so long off. But I eventually got PIP. I fought for PIP so hard. And my one feeling about personal independence payment, when it comes to mental health with PIP, I don't feel that anybody who only sees the GP in primary care services should be eligible for PIP if you're in secondary care and you've gone to etc. with mental health, then you can get PIP.
Would that not put a lot more pressure on I totally get where you're coming from, Louise, and I agree with you. Just wondering whether that would put a lot of pressure on GPs to refer people to psychiatrists who are or other mental health professionals who are under a huge amount of pressure.
That problem already. I mean, I was seeing that this morning. So there's that element. So for me, that's important, because if you're in secondary care with mental health issues, you have significant problems. And let me tell you, those forms are incredibly difficult to fill in if you live on your own.
Yeah.
Because you don't have anyone to cook. If you can't cook, you don't have anyone to cook for you, so you starve. So literally, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But for me, if you get it in secondary care, and then you do well enough that you're sent back to primary care under the GP, but you've still got PIP, you then keep your PIP until your review comes up. If you are still stable and in primary care, you shouldn't retain it.
Do you think there are people swinging the lead here? Do you think there are people who are simply saying, I want to take...
Actually, I have co-facilitated recovery groups in secondary care, and I have seen people in those groups, they tell each other how to manage staying off work. So they'll sit in the groups and they'll say, actually, I tell you what you do, you go on your job taster, you go for the first morning and you do a couple of hours, and then you say, oh, I'm really stressed, well, I've got to go home, and you do that, and then you go back to the thing and say, well, I couldn't manage it. Well, okay, don't worry, you've got no required time of work. Yeah. I've seen it time. Now, it's not everybody that would.
No, sure, of course not. Of course not.
But I have, and yet, actually, going to work is the best thing for all of us.
I totally agree. And Louise, listen, I'd love to talk to you all day. You've made some really, really good points. And do you know what? You sound like a pretty inspirational person, actually, who's come through a lot of stuff. So I wish you really well, Louise.
You're writing a book. Because they now say to me my diagnosis should never have happened.
Yeah.
It was my parents' divorce 50 years ago.
We've got to go to the news, Louise, but listen, keep in touch. I'd love to talk to you more on a future occasion, and I wish you well with everything you're doing. You're clearly someone who has thought about this a lot. You've come through a lot, and you're helping other people as well. That was Louise in Kent there. We'll talk much more about this issue next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company. Matt Vickers will be with us in just a minute. The Shadow Home Office Minister will find out what he thinks about this plan by the government. The breaking news this afternoon that all British adults are to require a digital ID Brit card. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Andy Burnham. We'll talk about Boris Johnson and his comments on Nigel Farage. We'll also talk about speed camera cash that police officers say they want to catch even more drivers. We'll talk to Graham Stringer, the MP for Labour, who says he's going absolutely nowhere and Andy Burnham will not be taking his seat. We'll talk about the sport. We'll get your views as well on the air between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring. All three of those things on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Many people getting in touch. We've got lots of calls ready to go, and we will take them as soon as we can. Christina has sent me a WhatsApp as well to say digital ID hacking will be a worry. We seem to have a lot of these recently. Heathrow, Marks and Spencer's, many others as well. Frank says, when I started my latest job, I had to show my passport. That's my ID. No more needed. An illegal immigrant won't have a passport, so they should not be working anyway. Let's find out what Matt Vickers thinks about this. He's the Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister, the Conservative MP for Stockton West. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme today. Will you happily carry a digital ID?
I think it's quite... Do you know what? This is going to cost a fortune. It's going to take ages. But more bizarrely, the fact that they think that this is the solution to the illegal immigration crisis is bizarre. Those people on the beaches in Calais are going to go, well, I was going to go across, but I might have to get one of them brick cards. Let's go. It's just not a thing. I don't think that's going to be in people's decision making when they break into this country. They thought they might have to have a brick card. We've already got conditions on people's ability to work that should restrain them. We've got responsibilities on employers not to employ people illegally. The reality is, this is not going to solve the illegal immigration crisis that is happening. They should be concentrating on how we deport people who've broken into this country.
Yes, well, you naively assume there are people who want to come across in small boats that aren't put off by the absolute crackdown of the one in, one out policy, which we know is a huge success, Matt, as well. I just wonder, just in regard to digital IDs, what's the real motive here? There are many people who think there's more sinister motives here, that the government wants to control us in some way. Do you feed into that? Do you think that's a reasonable explanation?
There's a feeling that it's a smokescreen, in the sense that I do not think that this is... I can't imagine that the government think this is the solution to the illegal immigration crisis. I'm going to stop people breaking into the country by requiring everybody in the UK to carry a digital ID card. It just doesn't really stack up as an argument. And I do not think it's the major motivation for doing so.
Matt, you just broke up slightly there, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying there. We know, just speaking about the one in, one out side of things and the scheme there, that a family of 3 have come here from France. We also know, in further migration news, that an Afghan dinghy migrant given asylum in the UK has gone on an 8-week holiday to Afghanistan. If people are given asylum and then go back to the place they're given asylum from, surely we should instantly say that they've lost their status.
So, well, the first thing, this family of 3 have arrived. It is a bizarre thing that we went from 1 in 17 people will be removed to the point where not only are the 16 getting in, not only is the one that's got sent back probably going to have another go tomorrow, we're then welcoming another crowd on top of that.
Although the one in, one out scheme was something the Conservatives argued for, Matt. They wanted this scheme.
Look, we wanted everybody out. If you broke in, we were going to send you home to wherever you'd come. And
but the Conservative government argued for the one in, one out scheme.
We argued to remove everybody.
Well, you wouldn't have removed everybody if you'd had the one in, one out scheme, so that's not right, is it? Because if you had a one in, one out scheme, you'd have been taking people from France, as the government is doing now.
We didn't want a one in, one out scheme. We wanted enter illegally.
You argued for it. The Conservative government wanted a one in, one out scheme.
So we had the Rwanda scheme. We had a scheme. We put in legislation that if you broke into this country, you would be detained and you would be deported. That is the only way to solve this crisis. People need to know that if they break in, they're not going to get to stay. Until that happens, this thing is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And when it comes to this chap who's popped back for his holidays, for a catch-up with the people back home in Afghanistan, actually, when Labour brought through their border security bill recently, we put an amendment down that would have done just that. The only people who voted for that amendment was Conservative MPs. We put forward amendments saying if you're in this country, if you're applying for asylum or you've been granted asylum and you think it's okay to go back to this place that is apparently incredibly dangerous and you couldn't possibly live there and you have to flee for your life, if you can pop back for a holiday, you can stay. We actually put that down as an amendment to the bill, and it was only Conservative MPs who backed it. Had they done that, this chap would not have the right to come back.
Would you do the same thing? Would you do the same thing for Ukrainians who go to Ukraine on holiday to see family?
If you come here claiming asylum, you come here on the basis that the entire premise for your arrival is because you are fleeing something that is so dangerous that you couldn't possibly go back, then you can't go back.
Okay.
And if you can't, then your entire basis for arguing you can't is just up the swanny, isn't it? It's mental.
Tell me your thoughts on Andy Burnham. Let's watch a clip now of Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who is wanting, it seems, to be leader of the Labour Party, although he says it's nothing to do with him. I would perhaps beg to differ. This is what he told BBC Radio Manchester this morning.
MPs were in touch with me. But let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
What do you make of what Andy Burnham says there? He's clearly on manoeuvres, Matt.
He's gagging for it, isn't he? He is gagging for it. But the reality is, I think the country's gagging for change, because actually, when you look at it, I think if you ask the average person in the street, they'd probably rather we ran a raffle to pick a new prime minister than carry on with what we've got. It is a disaster. The economy is being trashed. Everything is going on the wrong way. Inflation doubled, 14% more people out of work, businesses going to the wall, hundreds of thousands of people losing their jobs. It is a disaster. Anything.
Yeah, they rejected you in such huge numbers and voted for Labour, who have an overwhelming majority. They're going nowhere in the next 4 years, are they?
Nobody voted for this change, that's for sure. And the reality is, Andy Burnham.
Yeah, they're not listening to you, because in many polls you're around 16 or 17%. So they're not. They don't think you have a viable alternative to this.
Andy Burnham is a political weather vane. He was a Blairite when Blair was in office. He then went on to become a Corbynista when Corbyn was at the helm of his party. He doesn't stand for anything. He goes wherever he wants. He is literally a weather vane. He is a chameleon.
He's not literally a weather vane.
He is.
He's not literally a weather vane. He's figuratively a weather vane, I think, Matt.
He's a crooked weather vane. He doesn't just change 360 degrees. He goes up, down, all around.
Okay.
Whatever at the time.
Well, it's quite the metaphor there. Let's look at an exclusive clip we've just received, actually, from The Sun. This is on your party colleague, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, talking about Gaza flags. Let's have a look at this.
I think that people are sick of seeing, the Gaza flag being put up, a lamppost, a Pakistan flag. A couple of weeks ago, I went down the road from here in Newark and put up Union flags on lampposts for a couple of hours, and car after car, HGV drivers, van drivers were honking their horns. They were saying, good for you. People want us to feel pride in our country, and in order to do that, you have got to integrate people properly and expect that everyone who comes into our country cherishes our history and our heritage and our culture.
Should there be this ban of putting up the kind of the Palestine flag then in public buildings or in the...
Well, look, I don't want foreign flags on public buildings.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them on the streets. So
all foreign flags?
Well, look, there are obviously exceptions to that rule. I'm not going to go and, ban anyone from putting up a national flag, but I want people to feel a genuine sense of pride in our country, and that means people putting up flags of the United Kingdom and our, the nations of our country. But we should be one country under one flag.
Robert Jenrick there. That's a clip we've just received from The Sun's new YouTube show, Kate's Political Lunch Dates. The political editor of The Sun on Sunday there, Kate Ferguson, interviewing your party colleague Robert Jenrick. Do you think we should ban foreign flags, Matt?
More importantly, when are you going to invite me out for lunch? I do these interviews all the time and I don't get a bacon sandwich out of it. We're going to have to go out for lunch now.
Well, I just wonder, can you eat a bacon sandwich more successfully than Ed Miliband? That's my question.
I'll give it a whirl. More of a sausage roll muncher, to be fair. But the reality is, I think we should be looking at this as an issue. Last night, my local council had a vote, actually. The Conservatives brought forward a vote to push for public buildings to all feature our own flag, which I think is the right thing. If you go all over the globe, there are countries who have pictures of the president, of their monarch, who have their national flag on display in those public buildings. I think it's the right thing to do. I think we should be celebrating this flag. And the idea, I know there's cynicism now about the fact that people are putting up flags on lampposts. Well, it's our flag. It doesn't belong to a certain sect of society. It's our national flag.
But should we ban foreign flags? I'm well up for the county flags, the national flag, England, Scotland, Wales, whatever, and the Union flag. That's fine. But should we ban foreign flags?
I think you've got to look at the context. I think when you see some of the stuff that's been going on in London recently with some of the Palestine protests and the Gaza protests, actually the way in which that flag was being used, the way in which the sentiment that was being pushed around central London, where people were scared to death to go out in the middle of the city, is terrifying. I don't think you can necessarily ban all foreign flags. People come here from all sorts of places with their flag, but actually, if you come to Britain, if you become a British citizen, you should be getting behind our national flag as well as their culture and values that this country has.
Let me ask you about another Conservative, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He has said this to Harry Cole's programme, which is Harry Cole Saves the West, on Nigel Farage. This is what Boris Johnson said.
You know, my concerns, as I say, and they're serious concerns, are about the approach to the economy of the Reform Party and the approach on national security. And I think both of those will be severely tested in the years ahead, and people will actually want serious answers. And I think that the answers are going to be Conservative answers.
Boris Johnson there, and Nigel Farage responded to this.
Mr. Farage and Boris Johnson, he's branded you extremely dangerous and said he has anxieties on your position on Russia. What's your response?
Poor old Boris. Sad, isn't it, really?
What do you make of both what Nigel Farage and what Boris Johnson said there? Do you agree with Boris Johnson?
I think Britain misses Boris, doesn't it? We miss him. But I think the reality comes down to the economy. Yeah, we do. But it comes down to the economy and the consequences of Farage, the one-man band that is Reform. Actually, there would be serious consequences for our economy. You look at what's happening.
It's not a one-man. Reform UK is not a one-man band. It is many. It is hundreds of councillors that did very well at the local election, far better than your party recently. It's consistently leading the polls. It is much more than just Nigel Farage.
It is all about Nigel Farage. In terms of experience, you know, this is a gang of people. You haven't got the people there ready to look at the economy and all the challenges that are posed to it. The reality is that what happens in this country is Labour come into office, they trash our economy every time. They leave people out of work. They smash the ambitions and aspirations of people who want to go out to work and get on in life, who want to run a business, who want to create jobs and deliver economic growth every time. And then the Conservatives come in and clean up the mess. And that is exactly what is going to be required in a few years.
That's not what the electorate thought 14 months ago, Matt, and you know it.
Very seldom do we get to the point where there is anybody else who can clean up the mess. The reality is the Conservative Party will be needed more now than ever. We're a year in. 100,000 people have lost their job in the hospitality sector.
The electorate don't agree with you, Matt. They don't agree with you. Look at the polls. Look at the by-elections. Look at the polls. Look at the council elections. Nobody agrees with you, Matt.
We lost an election in a historic low we reached at the last general election.
And the council election recent a few months ago, we did equally, if not worse.
We've gone away. We've took that message. We're looking at what we're offering to the British people. The reality is there is huge challenges to our economy. It is our role to hold this Labour government to account. We saw it with winter fuel, where they pulled the U-turn. We're pushing them on all sorts of other things, whether it be that grooming gangs inquiry. We've pushed. We've held the line. We're scrutinising what they're doing. And the only people who were there to deliver that much-needed scrutiny on the winter fuel payment was Kemi and the Conservatives. The only people who were there making real noise and putting forward real plans for an inquiry. We've got deportations. When it comes to immigration, we are the people who have put an actual deportation bill together. It is there. It could be voted on tomorrow. It will deliver results. We've already talked about
the public consistently trusts. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine, Matt. But the public consistently trusts Reform UK much more to get the job done on deportations. Those are the facts. Those are the polls. That is election results as well with the local council elections. They're just not listening to you.
It's very easy to tweet. It's very easy to push out a press release, but you actually need proper, detailed, informed plans that can deliver results. We're going to keep pushing that forwards, and that'll be the case that we're making the British people.
Okay.
Keep your eyes. We've got a conference soon. There'll be more here.
Okay, Matt, thank you. That's Matt Vickers there, Shadow Home Office Minister for the Conservatives. Let's get a voice note now from JW on digital ID. This is the big story that everybody wants to talk about this afternoon. This is what JW thinks.
On indefinite leave to remain, and I can have citizenship, but citizenship ain't cheap. You're talking £9,000 to £12,000 per person. But the thing about these new ID cards, they've been mandatory for me for about almost a year now. When you go onto the website, there's a £60 charge just to get an appointment. Why are they charging £60 just to get the appointment? I don't know.
Thanks for that. A £60 cost for a digital ID appointment. We've looked this up. It's not a standard UK government fee, but may refer to a fee for a specific service as well. So just double check that. I know certainly when I went to America, I got scammed on the permit you need. It's about £14, and I went to the wrong website and they charged me £90 and I stupidly paid it, even though it was more than I could afford at that time. Very annoying. So you just need to be really, really careful about, you type something into Google and they say this is the legitimate one. So I do wonder, JW, whether you're paying the right amount of money. I could be wrong, but just everyone should be really careful about that kind of stuff. Tracy's in Hereford and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Tracy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Yeah, I don't know if it's a conspiracy thing or not, but I've been seeing a lot online about this digital ID for the last few months. Blair tried to push it through, and the stuff that I was seeing online was their whole plan was to have an influx of immigration to cause unrest with the public so that they could push this through. This was always their end game, and I believe that.
Do you think it's reasonable to say this is by design? Because I'm not sure any government can control that to the same degree. I mean, this government couldn't run a bath.
Yeah, and I don't trust them. They don't lie straight, these lot. I just think there's no care for the British public. We're always last. I think their whole plan is to have as much immigration, open borders as possible, and I don't trust them. I mean, COVID, you couldn't go on holiday if you didn't have the vaccination. You couldn't work in certain jobs if you didn't have the vaccination. And then there's also the post office scandal that people are still having things through. They can't be trusted. I do think it's all about control.
Tracy, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that, and thanks for giving us a ring there from Hereford. Becca says the government can't control illegal immigration, so they'll just punish the Brits with digital ID. I don't trust the government with anything digital because it will be hacked. Employers that hire illegals won't care. Tess in Lincolnshire says on digital ID, does that mean that doctors and nurses will be required to look at your digital ID before they treat you on the National Health? In which case I'm all for it, because it could cut down on the number of people using it who aren't entitled. Bet it won't happen. Well, Tess, they're meant to check already. They're meant to check your citizenship. They're meant to check, but the fact is that so many people in the NHS, for lots of reasons, and I'd love to hear from someone in the NHS on this, will not refuse care to people who present and say, look, I need a doctor here. Thank you to Donna from Newcastle under Lyme, who says, how will the government trace those without digital ID, or in fact any ID, as they have come into the country illegally? Surely that makes this scheme as useful as one in, one out, says Donna. Very good point there. Lots of calls, and we will get to those. I want to talk just for a minute about speed cameras and the fact that police forces are saying, give us the cash from those cameras and we'll catch even more drivers. I've been caught, I think, 3 times by a speed camera. Not a pleasant experience. Maybe the police should go out and catch some real criminals. We'll talk about that in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's talk about police forces who say that speeding fine money should be handed to them so they can catch more law-breaking drivers. This is Rachel Reeves. Of course, we're in budget season. All these different people want to put their case forward to get more cash. 35 chief constables, policing and local transport chiefs have written to ministers to urge the Chancellor to give them 100 million quid that the Treasury pockets annually from speed cameras. This money goes directly to the Treasury. It's used for general public services rather than being spent directly on new cameras and other road safety measures. Well, Steve Berry is a former Top Gear presenter who, rather appropriately, is in his car. Steve, what do you make of this? Because I don't know about you, I don't really want more speed cameras out there.
Well, I think they need to make their mind up. There's a very simple way of stopping speeding, and many of us are either driving a vehicle that is speed restricted right now or have driven behind a vehicle that's speed restricted. And the reason we know that is because in big letters it says on the back of the vehicle, this vehicle is speed restricted, and it has a red circle with the speed limit written inside it. All vehicles could be speed restricted if we actually wanted to stop speeding. But the stats that I've seen today, Peter, reckon that last year 5.3 million speeding offences were committed in the UK, and the income from those offences, which, as you said, currently goes into the Consolidated Fund, aka the giant bucket of gold that the Treasury has from speeding fines, is over 300 million in total.
And they'll be very reluctant to give that up, won't they?
Yeah, one of the reasons they're reluctant to give that up is because motorists who've been an enormously successful, big, fat, lovely cash cow for governments for decades are increasingly less so. One of those reasons being because taxing petrol and diesel was an incredibly efficient way of gathering revenue. Electric cars, it's way, way more difficult. How do you tax them?
And are they seeing that? Do you think they're realising that this is slipping away from them as more people get electric cars?
Yeah, because what they do, as we well know, you know, my subject's motoring, but I see it in almost every other aspect of what the governments are involved in, and I'm sure most people realise it, as you do. They say one thing and they mean another. We want people to stop speeding. OK, fit speed restrictors to all British cars.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we wouldn't want to do that. Well, most people who work in a commercial environment and drive a van or a wagon, they're speed restricted. Why not everybody? Ah, well, just admit it. You've got addicted to the 300 million quid that comes into the Treasury every year. Just say it out loud. Go on, be brave.
Just be honest about it. And actually, on the specific point of the police forces saying, hold on a second, give us the money back and we'll catch more people, do you think that's reasonable for them to say that?
Well, why? Right, it's meant to be speeding offences, so why isn't it spent on motoring matters instead of being...
Fixing potholes,
Gold. Why isn't it spent on motoring? It's the same as what we used to call road tax, and some people still do, VED, vehicle excise duty. There are loads of people wandering around, tying their own shoelaces, holding down a job and operating heavy machinery in some cases, who still think that that money is spent on the roads, fixing potholes. No, it isn't. It's just poured into the giant bucket. And a lot of people who are absolutely sick to death of paying through the nose for the privilege of moving around in the United Kingdom to earn a living and feed the family and pay their taxes and do all those things. They would like to see money that comes from motoring, whether it's vehicle excise duty, the duty on fuel, or even a speeding fine or a parking fine, actually go towards motoring matters instead of propping up whatever virtue signalling exercise the governments are involved in this week.
Yeah, well, you make total sense there, Stephen. It's great to talk to you. Thank you. Steve Berry there is a former Top Gear presenter. It's hard to disagree with a single thing he says there. And certainly when it comes to this, the police want more money, the Exchequer wants more money, and the motorist, quite reasonably, wants to spend less money. And yet nobody should speed. But if they really do want to seriously stop people speeding, well, the solution is there. On ID cards as well, loads of people getting in touch. One word from Matt Vickers, says George in Croydon. Delusion delusional. I don't care if Reform UK have no experience. Digital ID, COVID proved that we should not have it. Who pays the cost for it? Leslie says, will ID cards for migrants mean they gain citizenship? I don't think so, Leslie. Mick says, message for Matt Vickers, jump now because you ain't getting re-elected. I have so many relatives in Stockton and Darlington and Middlesbrough who think you're a nice guy, but it's going to be reform for them. Chris says, what makes your Tory guest think his analogy of Labour messes up and the Tories then clean the mess up is an acceptable way to govern our country? The entitlement of these people, who are the architects of many of the problems we face today, is breathtaking. And Gary says, it's a bit rich of Matt Vickers to criticise Reform's credentials for running the economy, given that his party added around 1.4 trillion to our national debt during their 14 years of government. Hardly a glowing record. And Gary, you know what they say, 1.4 trillion here, 1.4 trillion there. Soon adds up to real money. We'll talk about reform, we'll talk about the Conservatives, and we'll talk about Labour and the threat that Keir Starmer has from Andy Burnham, and whether there are two MPs that have been talked about as people who may step down to allow Andy Burnham to take their seats. Essentially, I mean, it's not as simple as that. There's the small matter of a by-election. We know that Andrew Gwynn has said that he's not going to do that. Graham Stringer is the other MP in the frame. Let's see what he says about that. Graham Stringer will join us in just a few minutes here on Talk Drive. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who has been in touch. Loads of messages coming in. Sean says this is about farming as much data as possible. Thank you to Sean for that. Thanks also to Kate, who says, I don't have an issue with ID cards in principle. I already have a driving licence and passport. I'm happy to show them when necessary. So what is an additional ID going to solve, and at what cost to the taxpayer? It will do nothing to stop illegal immigration, says Kate on Twitter. Another person, Angela, says, Matt never answered the question, will he carry the digital ID? William says, have you seen the state of Manchester city centre? Burnham is not fit for purpose. William also says, for the introduction of ID cards, let's have a referendum. Labour, as he calls them, will get absolutely trounced. Talk about a vote of no confidence. Christopher says this government has forgotten that they work for us. When did they ask us for ID cards? And little madam, met a few of those in my time, usually children of my friends, digital ID is a Tony Blair dream. It's data harvesting, intrusive and full-on communism. It's to monitor everything we do, nothing to do with immigration. Great show, mate. And also Paul in Belfast says, The reality is, whenever Tory and Labourers say that phrase, they make up total nonsense. Paul, we know about this coming from our part of the world. The reality is, let me be clear, or talking about people getting around a table, it's all meaningless, as we know, Paul. Fern in Glasgow says, Boris cared so much about the economy, he gave us Sunak, who trashed the place during the scam-demic. 80-seat majority down the drain, they're finished, they won't admit it. Bring on the election, says Fern. And Leslie says, Labour knew Corbyn would never gain power. Starmer is the puppet the left of the party plan to ditch at the first opportunity, says Leslie. We'll talk to Graham Stringer in a minute. We're just getting him lined up. Lisa is in Cardiff and wants to talk about digital ID. Let's have a chat to her. She's giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Lisa, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. Thank you for taking my call, as always.
Good evening.
I used to, years ago, before the migration problem got so bad, I didn't have a problem with it, ID cards.
Yeah.
Now, I feel as a British citizen, we're being penalised, and the government is sort of using this. We've got a national insurance number. I had it since I was 16.
Yeah.
Right? I know we've got our passports. We've got so many forms of British identification.
And if you don't have one of those forms of ID, for example, the recent voter ID stuff to go and vote, they'll give you one. They'll give you a card that says that you're entitled to vote. So why do we need another form? Why do we need this digital form? That's my question. And
I agree, and I don't want to be penalised. And as your previous callers have said, I don't want to be spied on to know what I bought, where I bought, how much I've spent. Whereas I think the government are once again going about it completely the wrong way. They're targeting the wrong people.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Lisa. And I do wonder how many people will resist this if it's the law, and if you can't access certain services or do certain, like, what happens if people get a new job and they say, right, you've got to show me your digital ID, and then they say, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. Well, what does the employer do? It's not the employer's fault. It's not even necessarily, I would argue, the employee's fault if they don't want to do it.
And I think I personally would resist it, even though I was in favour years ago, but because of the situation of the country now, I would resist it. I would be very...
Why were you in favour years ago, and what changed your mind, Lisa?
I was in favour of years ago because the migration problem wasn't as bad, and of course Tony Blair, quite frankly, he's probably thrilled that he should really not.
Yeah.
I can't even speak about him.
Well, listen, I know exactly how you feel. Lisa, thanks for your call. I appreciate that. That's Lisa in Cardiff. Quite a number of people expressing very interesting thoughts on many, many political issues today, not just our callers, but also Neil Coyle, who is the Labour MP for Bermondsey and Old Southwark. He says the annual Burnham wants to be leader headlines just before conference are more grating this year. He didn't take on the guy who oversaw Labour's worst defeat in the century and facilitated anti-Semitism, but pops up now under a huge majority and with 4 years to go. No ta, says Neil Coyle. He is the Labour MP for Bermondsey and Old Southwark, reacting to the news that Andy Burnham says Labour MPs are privately urging him to challenge Keir Starmer for the party leadership. Now, Andy Burnham did talk about this on Radio Manchester, BBC Radio Manchester this morning. I just want to play that clip again to see what he is saying, seeming almost reluctant to take the mantle.
MPs were in touch with me, but let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
Well, there are sort of two MPs here in the frame in regard to perhaps standing down to allow a by-election for Andy Burnham to become an MP. Now, there's no guarantee, of course, that he would necessarily win that by-election, and I'm sure parties like Reform UK would throw the kitchen sink at it. Andrew Gwynn is an MP who has said he's not standing down in Denton in the Greater Manchester area. Another MP in Blackley and Middleton South in Northern Greater Manchester is Graham Stringer, who joins me now. Graham, thank you for joining me. Your name has been touted on a number of occasions as someone who might stand down to make way for Andy Burnham. Are you going to do that?
No, I'm not. A general election, I asked people in the constituency to support me. They did. And I intend to do a full term till the next general election, whenever that is. I think to do anything else for manoeuvrings within the Labour Party would be dishonest, and the electorate have a history of not liking being messed about, and if MPs do mess them about, they have a habit of messing the candidates in the next by-election about.
Do you think that Andy Burnham will become the next leader of the Labour Party? And in terms of what he's talking about, is it fair for him to talk in the way that he is talking? He's essentially saying, as we've heard from BBC Radio Manchester, that it's not up to him. I mean, he has agency in this, does he not?
Yes, of course he does. I think Andy has to say, yes, I know, I want to be leader. There is no point playing footsie with the Labour Party. He has to state his intentions. He said that it's not about personality, it's about programme. I think that's true for any candidate or Prime Minister. There has to be a programme, but he has to say he wants it. And then the pathway is difficult to almost impossible. He has to find a seat to win. I don't know of any Labour MP that said they will stand down. He then has to win that seat. He has to become the candidate, which is determined by a subcommittee of the NEC, controlled by the current leadership.
That's the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, and of course they would say they're independent, but Keir Starmer realistically would have some sort of say in all of that.
Yes, realistically. The Prime Minister and the people around him have a majority on the NEC, so it's unlikely. There's no love lost between them and Andy. It's unlikely they would make him the candidate, and even if they did, he still has to win that, and as I said, the electorate don't like being used for internal Labour Party convenience.
You're way ahead in your constituency, 16,864 votes, which is more than half of the vote, a majority I'm sure many MPs would love to have. Reform UK came second with 6,614 at the last election. I just wonder from Keir Starmer's perspective what you think of him as someone who's secure in their seat, who has said that you're definitely going to serve a full term. You've now confirmed that. What do you think of Keir Starmer's leadership, and should people challenge him?
It's not as good as it should be. We wouldn't be lagging in the opinion polls if he'd done a wonderful job. I think he has to improve, and basically he's got 7 months. It's not 7 months that I'm defining, but that's when the local election results and the results in Wales for the Welsh Assembly will come through. If they're as bad as expected, and Keir hasn't got a grip on the government, so that he's got a programme that he's explaining and the philosophy behind that programme, and he's making difficult decisions, nobody's going to like those decisions up front, because they will be hard, whether they're cuts in services or increases in taxes. But while nobody will like them, they will like even less a government that hasn't got the confidence and leadership to take decisions that are necessary in the country's interest.
It's interesting that another communications chief, a woman called Steph Driver, who we've dealt with a lot behind the scenes here at Talk, has gone today. She's been in post since 2021. The spotlight certainly is on his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, in regard to donations to Labour Together, which was an organisation that brought Keir Starmer to the forefront. Do you think there are questions to be answered there from your reading of that situation?
I have no idea, quite frankly. I never get involved with the reputations of paid staff. People say that Morgan McSweeney, who I've never met, has all this influence. As far as I'm concerned, as a member of the Labour Party and a Labour MP, we voted for Keir Starmer. He's the leader, he's the Prime Minister, and it's his responsibility to take decisions. What officials around him do, whether they come and go, I have no connection to that. It's Keir's responsibility.
What about Deputy Leader? Who should that be?
I will vote for Lucy Powell. She's the next constituency along. I think I didn't nominate anybody in the election. I thought there shouldn't have been one. I think we should have had a pause for 6 or 8 months and had a think about what a deputy leader would do, because the Prime Minister, I think, quite wrongly blocked off the possibility of the deputy leader of the Labour Party being deputy Prime Minister. And having done that, so he's really putting 2 fingers up to the party. Having done that, it changes the rule from what it has been. And I think the party should have had a think about that and decided what was wanted. So I didn't nominate, but I think Lucy is the next constituency along. She's not in the cabinet, so she'll be freer to say what she wants to say. So on that basis, I will vote for her.
The big proposal from the government today is for digital IDs. Do you think that's a good idea? Is it something you'd be happy to carry around with you?
Since Tony Blair proposed digital ID, I've been agnostic about it. There is a strong case for it. For instance, maybe you remember the bombs that went off at the Atocha railway station in Madrid.
Yes, I do.
Some years ago.
Yeah.
The culprits were found because there was a record of their fingerprints in the Spanish ID card system. There are many other examples you can give where ID cards have been helpful. On the other hand, this country has a history of you can do whatever you want so long as it's not against the law. And our relationship with the police is different from that on the continent. And certainly through lockdown, and more recently through the police going and interviewing people for whatever they call criminal hate crime.
Yeah, non-crime hate incidents, yeah.
That's right. It's really 1984 speak, isn't it? That I am sceptical that the police wouldn't use it and start demanding ID cards. So from having been agnostic, neutral, I'm swinging against because of the experience of the police, both during COVID and more recently.
Just before you go, Graham, I just want to play a clip of Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, talking about Palestinian flags, and I wonder if we could get your reaction to that. Let's just hear what Robert Jenrick has been telling the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson.
I think that people are sick of seeing, the Gaza flag being put up, a lamppost, a Pakistan flag. A couple of weeks ago, I went down the road from here in Newark and put up Union flags on lampposts for a couple of hours, and car after car, HGV drivers, van drivers were honking their horns. They were saying, good for you. People want us to feel pride in our country, and in order to do that, you have got to integrate people properly and expect that everyone who comes into our country cherishes our history and our heritage and our culture.
Should there be this ban of putting up the Palestine flag then in public buildings or in the...
Well, look, I don't want foreign flags on public buildings.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them on the streets.
All foreign flags?
Well, look, there are obviously exceptions to that rule. I'm not going to go and, ban anyone from putting up a national flag, but I want people to feel a genuine sense of pride in our country. And that means people putting up flags of the United Kingdom and our, the nations of our country. But we should be one country under one flag.
Banning flags, Graham, what do you think?
I'm not in for banning things. We've just talked about ID cards. I think we live in a relatively free country. I find the waving about of Palestinian flags when the Palestinians are led by a terrorist organisation whose policy is to kill Jews and destroy Israel. I find it offensive and provocative. But banning it just isn't in the British English traditions. And when 3 people wrote to me when there was a Raise the Colours issue and Union flags and the flag of St George was put on lampposts, they said they were threatened by it, and I wrote back to them, the 3 people, and said, the flag represents everybody in this country. It's a uniting feature, and we should be proud of it.
Graham, thank you. Someone who's proud of you is Leslie. He says, I hope Graham Stringer doesn't step aside for Burnham. He's the only Labour MP with principles. That's what Leslie says. She's texted in to the programme. Graham, thank you for your contribution. That's Graham Stringer MP, the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South. We're going to take a look at the sport next and get more of your comments as well. We'll take some more calls between now and 6 o'clock. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who has messaged in. Loads to discuss in the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, Mike Anstead is with us. He's the head of content for The Sun. Mike, great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good, yep. Peter, how are you?
Excellent. Yeah, very well, thank you. Spurs, let's talk about Spurs inserting a first option clause in Kane's Bayern contract that would allow them to re-sign him for $54 million this summer. What could happen? Could we see him back in North London next season?
Well, I think there's increasing chance we might see Harry Kane back in the Premier League. So Bayern Munich have admitted today that if Harry Kane wants to go, if he puts his hands up and says, I want to go back to the Premier League or even go back to Spurs, they've got little they can do to actually stop it. So we know he's got a $54 million break clause. Spurs have first refusal. If he wants to come back to the Premier League, he's only 47 goals behind Alan Shearer's all-time record of 260. There's a lot going for him. Fans would like him back here. Why not? It's the biggest league in the world.
Let's talk about...
On that note, I must say we've got a big story dropping at 9 o'clock on something that's related to this. I can't say now, but it does involve Tottenham and might affect if they go for Harry Kane.
Okay,
Keep
so
your eyes peeled
be
for that
sure
one.
to log on to the sun.co.uk/sport at 9 o'clock. You'll see it in the paper tomorrow as well,
absolutely.
presumably. Manchester United and England midfielder Kobbie Mainoo has been given a boost, I should say, by the boss Ruben Amorim. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so Kobbie Mainoo, one of Man United's academy kids, did really well, broke through into the first team a couple of years ago, played for England at a major tournament. He's sort of fallen off a cliff really his career, and he wanted to leave in the summer. United considered selling him because they get some money for the PSR books. He's stayed, and now Ruben Amorim, the boss, has got him on an intense training programme. He wants him playing this number 6 role that Man United are struggling for this defensive midfielder, wants him sat next to Bruno Fernandes in midfield. He's potentially going to get opportunity at Brentford because Casemiro suspended. So it's a chance for Mainoo to prove that he can be long-term boost for Man United.
And just finally, Mike, the Ryder Cup just 24 hours away. Tell us how things are lining up, especially for my fellow countryman Rory McIlroy.
Well, exactly. Rory's going to be leading the charge. He's been speaking today. Yeah, he says, look, go out, let's become legends. You can become, history makers at Ryder Cups. There's been no away winner since the Miracle in Medina in 2012, which Rory's involved with. He's obviously our star player. It's going to be fascinating. Look, it's in New York. The Yanks are going to be loud on that first tee tomorrow lunchtime, our time. It's going to be great. We find out the pairings at 9 o'clock tonight, see who Rory's going out with. Bring it on. It's going to be a great 3 days coming up.
Great stuff on Phil coverage, of course, with the Sun online and in the paper. For the meantime, Mike, thank you. That's Mike Anstead there, who is the sport head of content at the Sun. Appreciate you joining us. Loads of people getting in touch about Graham Stringer as well, who we heard from just before the break there, the Labour MP. Paul and Fife says Graham Stringer should consider joining Reform UK. He sounds like a very sensible, balanced man. Carl in Northampton, listening to your last guest, Graham, he doesn't sound much like a Labour MP. He sounds like he should move over to Reform UK. He has common sense and morals, says Carl in Northampton. And Paul in Hartlepool says the fact Lucy Powell considers scrutiny of rape gangs as dog whistle politics should exclude from any position whatsoever in politics. She is a disgrace, says Paul in Hartlepool. Well, that is, of course, Lucy Powell. She is one of the contenders for deputy leader of the Labour Party, as is Bridget Phillipson. And we know that Andy Burnham, the the mayor of Greater Manchester, is thinking as well about becoming leader of the Labour Party, but he says it's up to other people. Digital ID is the big issue you want to talk about. Just before the news, let's hear from Mark in Lincolnshire. He's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Mark, digital ID, what do you think?
Very interesting subject, isn't it, really? I mean, my thoughts on it, obviously I'm not a fan. Not something I want to see come in. It's something I've feared for quite a long time, to be fair.
Why do you fear it?
Sorry?
Why do you fear it?
It's more about the connotations of exactly what it's going to lead to, because we all know what this is going to lead to. It's got nothing to, I've had a couple of little spats on X already with this. It's nothing to do with, it's going to stop immigration. No, it isn't. It's got nothing to do with immigration. If you think it's got anything to do with immigration or illegal immigration, which is what they're trying to sell this as, then you're a damn fool. You're an absolute idiot if that's what you think this is about, because it absolutely isn't. It's not going to stop people coming over in boats. It's not going to stop them working on the black economy, because the black economy, funny enough, is against the law. Yeah. And they don't really respect the law, so it's going to do absolutely nothing.
What would you say to Mick, who says they already monitor what you buy, where you buy it, how much, etc. Every time you use a store loyalty card, the authorities can access the data and track your movements. Another person, Steve, says, I'm in favour of digital ID if it means the government seeing where and how much benefit claimants are using my money, says Steve. So there are people getting in touch today who don't share your fears, Mark.
Well, that's, again, I can only, with all the respect in the world, they're idiots, quite frankly, because it does not stop at a digital ID. If it was literally, put it like this, if it was literally, let's say, for example, an ID card, a physical card, okay, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the digital aspect. Because you're making it digital, it's going to end up being tied into, if it's not already anyway, tied into banking. So it'll be tied to that. So it's going to be tied to benefits, which they're already looking at anyway. So they can look in your bank account if you're on benefits, for example. And let's face it, this isn't just about people in my situation that are housebound that have to rely on benefits, sadly. It's about people, you know, if you're claiming working tax credits, you fall into that bracket as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's plenty of working people that are already in this bracket where the government can snoop into your accounts to see what you're up to. The digital ID, the reason why digital ID is such a bad idea is because it will just continue to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. And I think we've got to go to the news, Mark, but I think a lot of people will agree with you in regard to the growth of all of that, and that's something we'll be getting into with Andrew Allison from the Popular Conservatives, who'll be with us in just a few minutes' time. You can get your call in to 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Peter Cardwell with Talk Drive today and tomorrow here on Talk. Digital ID for all adults in the UK. That is what the government is proposing. Keir Starmer is going to announce it tomorrow. What do you think? Not everybody, but I would say something like 95% of the people getting in touch with the station in the last couple of hours are saying they don't want it. Let me know your thoughts. I'll take as many calls as I can and voice notes as well between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Andrew Allison standing by from the Popcons, the Popular Conservatives, to give his take on all of this. Also, Andy Burnham on manoeuvres. Could he be the next Prime Minister, or is it simply something he does every year? Neil Coyle, another Labour MP, says this is the annual Burnham wants to be leader headlines. We'll also talk about what's in the Sun tomorrow. We'll talk about fish and chips as well. UK cod rationing could mean one fish and chip supper for every 1,200 people. I had a fish and chip supper the other night. It was absolutely delicious. In fact, maybe I'll have another one tonight. I probably shouldn't. Loads of time for your calls as well. Whatever you want to talk about it today, whether it's digital IDs, whether it is Starmer, Andy Burnham, whatever it is you want to talk about. Fish and chips, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. You can send that to the main number. You can also send WhatsApp text messages to that number as well, and give me a ring, all on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and Kevin O'Sullivan at 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, we'll talk more about Andy Burnham in a second, but I want to talk about that breaking news this afternoon about digital IDs. This is Keir Starmer saying that he wants a digital ID for every adult in the UK. What do you think about that? Lots of people getting in touch to say, no, thank you. Well, Andrew Ellison is head of campaigns for Popular Conservatism. Andrew, your thoughts on this? Good evening to you.
I've said for a long time, and good evening, Peter, that this is a solution looking for a problem. I mean, let me give you two scenarios here. If an illegal migrant goes to an employer right now and asks for a job, a law-abiding employer will say, let me see your national insurance number. No national insurance number, no job. An employer who's not bothered about the law will just say, yeah, I'll take you on. Now, you tell me how that's going to be any different with a digital ID system. It will simply not work.
What I often find, and this is not just limited to Labour, the Conservatives did it as well, so did the Lib Dems when they were in government, was the answer, a lot of people say, is we've got to do something. We've got to create essentially more law. We've got to do a new thing. My point to so many governments is, why don't you just implement the law that's there already? If it is illegal at the moment to employ someone at a car wash, a nail bar, a barber's, who isn't here in this country legally, enforce the law that's there already. Why does everybody else need to suffer and have the inconvenience of having a digital ID when actually we don't need one?
I completely agree with you, Peter. And I remember, I'm going back, must be about over 15 years ago, in a conversation that I had with David Davis. And he said, if you go to the police and say to them, would you like more powers? They automatically say, oh, yes, we would love more powers. And they will keep on taking more and more powers when really they've got powers already to enforce the law as it is.
Well, listen, I totally get that. I want to talk about another story with you now. This is something I'm definitely interested in your thoughts on. This is Andy Burnham. Very interesting tweet from Neil Coyle. He's not always well behaved as an MP. He's the Labour MP for Bermondsey and Old Southwark. He said, this is reacting to the news that Andy Burnham says Labour MPs are privately urging him to challenge Keir Starmer for the party leadership. Neil Coyle says, I'm not me. The annual Burnham wants to be leader headlines just before conference, Labour's conference, is of course in Liverpool next week, are more gracing this year. He didn't take on the guy who oversaw Labour's worst defeat in a century and facilitated anti-Semitism, Jeremy Corbyn obviously, but pops up now under a huge majority and with 4 years to go. No ta. Well, let's just remind ourselves what Andy Burnham said to BBC Radio Manchester this morning about this.
MPs were in touch with me, but let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
What do you make of what he says there? He says it's not really his decision. I mean, it is, isn't it?
It's not exactly a ringing endorsement of Keir Starmer's leadership, is it? And he's quite clearly leaving the door open for him. But he's got one major problem, and we both know what that problem is. He's not a member of Parliament.
He's also the man who, as a member of Parliament, lost the Labour leadership twice, once to Ed Miliband and secondly to Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes, that's right, even to Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, that's right. And can you name me a safe Labour seat at the moment?
Well, I don't think there is a safe.
I can't even think of one.
Don't think there is a safe Labour seat. I mean, maybe Graham Stringer's seat. He's very far ahead. But if there were any form of by-election, Reform UK and every other party would throw the kitchen sink at it. Of course they would. There's no guarantee of anything these days in politics. It's a fascinating one.
And we saw also, Peter, in Helsby, didn't we? That by-election. I mean, that was notionally a very safe Labour seat.
Yep.
Yeah, Reform only won it by 6 votes. But, you know...
But actually they overturned a majority of 14,000. So, there may only be... Sarah Pochin may only have a 6-vote majority, but, I mean, to overturn the majority that was there already, that is a very significant achievement. I wonder, Andrew, where you stand, and not necessarily the popcorns, but you yourself, in between these kind of arguments in regard to Reform UK and the Conservatives, because Boris Johnson has been talking as well. Let's see a clip from him. He's been talking about his concerns over Nigel Farage. He said this to Harry Cole, who his show Harry Cole Saves the West is on at 10 o'clock each evening, Monday to Thursday, on this station. So let's see what Boris Johnson said yesterday.
You know, my concerns, as I say, and they're serious concerns, are about the approach to the economy of the Reform Party and the approach on national security. And I think both of those will be severely tested in the years ahead, and people will actually want serious answers. And I think that the answers are going to be Conservative answers.
Then Nigel Farage responded to that. He was asked about it earlier today. This is what Nigel Farage said. Very, very pithy.
Mr Farage and Boris Johnson, he's branded you extremely dangerous and said he has been sideways on your position on Russia. What's your response?
Poor old Boris. Sad.
Where do you stand on this, Andrew? Who do your sympathies lie with? A popular Conservative, is it Boris Johnson, or is it the more popular Conservative with the small c, Nigel Farage? Maybe he wouldn't call himself a Conservative, I don't know.
Well, you've asked me for my personal opinion, because I don't really have a corporate opinion on Boris Johnson, as we were only formed last year. I mean, I just wish Boris Johnson would just go away, quite frankly. I think it was a pretty disastrous Prime Minister. The problems that we're dealing with now with illegal migration, and indeed migration full stop, the Boris wave. The clues there is in the title. All the draconian restrictions that we had to go through on lockdowns. I mean, we spent or borrowed enormous sums of money, as much as we would if we were fighting a war, and for what? And all of this was done under Boris Johnson's leadership. And the problem with Boris is that he likes to be loved, and he has to be loved, and he has to think that he's relevant.
Not too much love from you, Andrew.
He's very much yesterday's man.
Not too much love from you, Andrew. I wonder how you feel about another Conservative politician, one of the few popular Conservative politicians to coin a phrase, Robert Jenrick. Let's see what he has been saying to The Sun, this time to Kate Ferguson, the Sun on Sunday's political editor, about flags and Palestinian flags. This is what he has been saying, Robert Jenrick has been saying to Kate Ferguson.
I think that people are sick of seeing, the Gaza flag being put up, a lamppost, a Pakistan flag. A couple of weeks ago, I went down the road from here in Newark and put up Union flags on lampposts for a couple of hours, and car after car, HGV drivers, van drivers were honking their horns. They were saying, good for you. People want us to feel pride in our country, and in order to do that, you have got to integrate people properly and expect that everyone who comes into our country cherishes our history and our heritage and our culture.
Should there be this ban of putting up the Palestine flag then in public buildings or in the...
Well, look, I don't want foreign flags on public buildings.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them on the streets. So
all foreign flags?
Well, look, there are obviously exceptions to that rule. I'm not going to go and, ban anyone from putting up a national flag, but I want people to feel a genuine sense of pride in our country. And that means people putting up flags of the United Kingdom and our, the nations of our country. But we should be one country under one flag.
Robert Jenrick there speaking to Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday. Andrew, I wonder what you think about banning flags. I'm not particularly happy to see a load of Palestinian flags all over the place, but I don't necessarily think people should be banned from holding them, from displaying them necessarily. What do you think?
You can't go around banning people from actually holding them in their hands. You can't really go around banning them from displaying them in the windows of their property or on their property, unless it's breaking some sort of planning rules, of course. So no, you can't do that. But I really am with Robert on this one. And we had this a few weeks ago, didn't we, in Birmingham, when it was Pakistan's National Day, and they had a big Pakistan flag, and I think it was the library in Birmingham it had the Pakistan flag projected onto it. I mean that should not be happening. I mean, we should be proud of our flags, because at the same time as they were doing that, they were trying to use some sort of petty jobs worth excuse that it was dangerous putting Union Jacks and St George's flags on lampposts. I think what Robert is saying there is what the majority of people in Britain think. I'm absolutely sure of that.
Yeah.
And he's just speaking the language of the common man and woman.
Andrew, just one more thought before you go. Another story that's up today about UK cod rationing, fish rationing, would mean one fish supper for every 1,200 people. Fishermen will only be allowed to catch 11 tonnes of cod, not very much, in British waters next year if ministers follow scientists' advice to protect the nation's favourite choice for fish and chips. This is the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea, an independent body which advises the government on how much to exploit fish stocks, which has judged that cod populations are so endangered that none should be caught in almost all British waters next year to give them a chance to recover. Do you think they're talking sense here, or will we be forced to simply eat other fish, do you think?
Well, thankfully, if I go to a fish and chip shop, I prefer haddock to cod, so maybe I'm all right. I don't know what the haddock population is.
I think it's a bit healthier than the cod population anyway.
Well, yeah, it seems to be healthier than the cod population. But I mean, if the stocks are getting low, then I suppose something is going to have to be done about it. But it's not an area of expertise, even though I really do like eating it.
I have an area of expertise in eating fish and chips. I don't know much more about it, though. But listen, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on all of that. That's Andrew Allison there. He's head of campaigns at the Popcorns, Popular Conservatism. On benefits, Maureen has been in touch from Liverpool. Maureen, you're very welcome to the programme. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What point would you like to make, Maureen?
Good evening, Peter. The point I wanted to make is about national insurance numbers. Now, I've worked in the DWP for many, many years. I'm 80 now, but when I was 16, I was giving national insurance numbers to people who applied or people coming from into the country.
Okay.
Now, that's a common factor for everybody from 16 to the end of their life. People are coming from abroad and they have a period to live and work in this country. I don't see why our records branch can't indicate when that period is coming to an end. And information is passed to DWP.
Well, you would think, wouldn't you, and you have experience of this, Maureen, that the system is essentially there already. So whether a digital ID is needed specifically in regard to people's eligibility to work, it should be pretty straightforward. I mean, surely that's the point of
the records branch should have details of your national insurance number, your employment record, your contributions, your address, your employer. And I don't see why it can't be flagged up at appropriate times to people, check where they are and whether they're still in the country or not. And if they're coming to the end of it, you need to know where they are and what are they doing.
Well, that makes perfect sense, Maureen, from someone who knows what she's talking about. Thank you, Maureen. Maureen in Liverpool there, who worked for the DWP. I'm sure it was called different things, DHSS and others, throughout her career. Rob has been in touch and says Starmer's push to digital ID is an outrage. It will have no impact on illegal immigrants whatsoever. More Big Brother is what it's about. Ivan says if you're not a criminal, if you are a British citizen or have a current work visa and contribute, then ID is great to allow access to public services, only including driver licences, housing, rent, healthcare, tax, social services, insurance, all household bills, but must not be allowed to become a political or judicial tool. Works great around the world. Lee says, I'm suffocating with this government. I've never felt so powerless and surprised in my 51 years. It is unbearable, says Lee. Betty says we haven't, I'll come to this in a second. John, the Isle of Wight, says just another dead cat to get us all worked up, just to distract us from the real problems with the government. We're not stupid. Well, John, if they're doing it, it's not necessarily a dead cat strategy. If they're going to actually do it, it is going to make a massive change as well. Guy in Leicester says, I'd like to ask the Irish question here. How will the UK government enforce these rules on Irish citizens and those in Northern Ireland who do not see themselves as British? Republicans will never accept this, and that would fuel an even bigger black market, says Guy in Leicester. Well, listen, there are a lot of people who are Irish, consider themselves Irish, as is the law in regard to the Belfast Agreement. You can be Irish, have an Irish passport and live in Northern Ireland. You can say you're Irish. That's absolutely fine. Similarly, I'm from Northern Ireland. I say I'm British. I have a British passport. That is absolutely fine as well. That's what the Belfast Agreement says. And if anybody says that isn't in the Belfast Agreement, they're lying to you. And if they say that anybody who calls themselves British, who lives in Northern Ireland, isn't British, they're also lying to you. And that is against the law. In regard to, well, it is contrary to what the law says anyway. Guy in Leicester, I think you're right actually, although there are many people who consider themselves Irish who will have a UK driving licence, for example, will have a driving licence which has a union flag on it. They may keep it in their wallet, they may not advertise it too much, but or indeed many people who consider themselves Irish who have British passports simply because it's cheaper than getting an Irish passport. Betty says we haven't seen cod and chips since the war with Iceland up here in Scotland. Lots of sustainable haddock, says Betty. I'm a big fan of cod. I must say I had one the other night, but it was pretty pricey, so maybe I should change to haddock. We're going to talk about this in just a second with Fergus Watson. He's the owner of the Fish and Chip Company, which is a fish and chip shop in Auchterarder up in Scotland. We'll talk to him in a second. We'll get your thoughts on all of this, including digital IDs. Plenty of time to get your call in 40 minutes before the end of the programme when Kevin O'Sullivan takes over. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of people getting in touch today. Thank you to Tom, who says, how many lives did the COVID app and vaccine passport save? I had neither. I am somehow still here. We already have passports, bank accounts, national insurance numbers, NHS numbers. We don't need digital ID. Another person says, funny how obsessive party leaders, both Tory and Labour, can't stop themselves criticising Reform UK and Nigel Farage, but one by one are adopting and spouting reform policies. The latest appears to be flags in public buildings, following not leading. Suzanne says, Peter, are they not required to put this ID stuff to the people, or at least have a vote on it in Parliament? We already have our ID. If it's really just about illegal workers, then why not just give every illegal person one when they come over? We don't need them. Well, listen, they may well put it to Parliament, but Labour can basically do what it wants if it has the support, which I think it probably would. Pete Sutton says, why is fish and chips a fish supper? It could be dinner, lunch, or even breakfast. Oh, I'd love a fish supper for my breakfast. Maybe this is a northern thing. We set in Northern Ireland. I think they set in Scotland too. Fergus Watson is the owner of a fish and chip shop, fish and chip company in Auchterarder in Scotland. Do you call it a fish supper, Fergus?
Good evening, Peter. Yes, I think it's just what traditionally it's been called in Scotland. We just call it a supper, and it relates to like dinner times, going for your supper, having supper with friends. So the word fish supper, I mean, I grew up with it. I think it's just that connotation.
Yeah, and fish supper meaning fish and chips is certainly what I grew up with as well. I had a fish supper the other night. It was absolutely delicious. Although I worried I was becoming middle class because I actually put some balsamic vinegar on it. As long as I didn't wash my windows with it, that's the main thing. Fergus, are you worried about this recommendation that cod rationing could mean one fish supper for every 1,200 people a year, or do you think it's just a load of bollocks?
Oh, that was clever.
Thank you.
To be honest with you, there's been... obviously Scotland, our traditional... We've got 3 fish and chip shops across our small group, and our customer base predominantly it's haddock that we sell. So I know that there's been that sort of conversation going back and forwards about cod and haddock. I do remember growing up, it was probably more cod when we were growing up. But so for us, it's all about... I think the sustainability issue is really important. I think stocks have to be looked after and preserved, because obviously that, that gets to a point where they'll eventually run out. The challenge we've had in Scotland is because of some of the other pressures, there's more pressure on haddock prices now, so demand for haddock's actually higher. So our price point this summer has increased significantly.
How much is haddock and chips then at your fish and chip shop?
Yeah, we're between 10.60 and maybe 11.25, just with different locations and different sort of market dynamics.
And what about cod then?
So we don't do any cod.
You don't do cod at all?
No, because it's traditionally the Scottish thing is haddock and chips.
Sure.
Basically, so we keep it simple. If you see what I mean, we don't get any requests, to be honestly, for.
That's interesting.
Haddock,
what are the
cod.
cheap?
We do.
Okay. What are the cheaper fish then, Fergus? Are there ones where you can get a bit cheaper than haddock?
Yeah, I mean, there's things like, I suppose you can look to things like pollock, and there's other cuts, but we're trying to, because we're traditional fish and chip shops, we're well established, our customers are loyal to us, we try not to change, and then we try to run our businesses as competitively as possible, because we all know what we've been through the last number of years with all the narrative about everything costs, staff, blah, blah, blah. So we just try and still provide that great service to 90% of our businesses. Our customers in Auchterarder are local, and then my other 2 locations, there's a big visitor dynamic to that as well. So yeah, a lot of English visitors will ask for the cod, but then they try the haddock and they say they like it. So so I think, I mean, the interesting thing for me is the balance, is the science, are the numbers right, and how do you get that balance in terms of protecting stocks, not just for cod, because the haddock equation, that conversation might start to happen, and then I think after that it's a bit innovative and looking at different things, and businesses adapt and have to change to the sort of market dynamic, to still provide what our customers are looking for.
Do you think it's reasonable for this International Council for the Exploration of the Sea to say that actually we all need to eat a lot less cod because it's just not sustainable? Wait till it builds up a bit and then maybe start fishing it again?
To be honest, yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance, and they're obviously coming out with their data to present that case. And obviously last year I was just reading the article about the thresholds and the thresholds were increases. I think if it all comes through, it just means there'll be less people will eat less cod, but consumers will find alternatives. And other, in terms of getting the wholeness that you get from fish, not necessarily just in a chippy, but what else, the other health benefits you get from eating fish, basically. So yeah, I don't know. I always feel a bit sceptical of these things. We'll go through a process, there'll be numbers, there'll be a bun fight, a decision will be made, and then life goes on.
Yeah.
Fergus,
what is it about fish chips that is just so delicious? I mean, we have a situation where, it's a cold evening, often somewhere coastal, and you go for fish and chips, you put a load of salt and vinegar on them, and they just taste delicious no matter what the fish is. Is there something psychological about that, about the fact that just for some reason, fish and chips from a fish and chip shop on a cold night, usually often at the sea, near the seaside, it's just, I think, the most delicious thing in the world?
You know, we all love fish and chips. It's like part of our traditional, it's part of our heritage across the UK. It evokes childhood memories of going on holidays and going to the seaside, your fish and chips, your ice cream that you get as well. And yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate that we're in a position where we're in the market of giving that, because people love fish and chips. It's one of the most popular sort of takeaway products, and because we've maintained our values and our traditions and how we and look after our customers, who doesn't want a fish and chips overlooking the harbour?
Yeah, absolutely.
With Sunday, and you know, yeah. So I think there's been a lot of challenges within the sector in the last sort of few years. We all know about, and I think there's still some challenges ahead. But I think if you've got your offer right, it's going to it deals with all the ups and downs of what's happening in the economy at the moment, because people love fish and chips.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I love it.
Of course. Fergus, thank you. Fergus Watson there, who is owner of the fish and chip company, which is a fish and chip shop in Auchterarder. It's 3 sites. I had called the other night, and I think what I might have to do tonight for the purposes of research is to have haddock and chips. I think fish and chips twice in 1 week might be a big deal, but I haven't had fish and chips for about 6 months. So I think maybe I should have haddock and chips tonight and report back tomorrow about which one was nicer. Steve in Bromsgrove says, a good use of a digital ID would be your fish ration. Your fish ration is allocated to your digital account, so you cannot buy more than the government allocates. The same will apply to diesel, petrol and flights, etc., says Steve. Please, no. Molly says, how many French people eat cod and chips from British waters? Martin in Gillingham says, I was born in Grimsby 71 years ago. We always had haddock. My dad used to say cod was for cats in the garden, says Martin in Gillingham. Lots more to discuss, not just on fish and chips, but also on what's in the Sun tomorrow. Obviously, a lot on the politics and Andy Burnham as well. And we'll talk about digital ID. Loads of people getting in touch about that. Yvonne has just messaged me as well to say if I were to select my last meal on earth, it would be fish and chips. Yvonne, I think that is a very, very good idea. We'll talk to Will Barker from The Sun in just a second. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's take a look inside the Sun tomorrow. I'm delighted Will Barker is with us, the Deputy Head of News. How are you doing, Will? You all
Very
right?
good, thank you.
Really disturbing story here about a taxi driver. This is in regard to the taxi driver who gave a lift to Axel Radicubana. Just talk us through this.
Well, this is just extraordinary. So the inquiry rather, has been going on. And there's sort of a lot of the stuff we've been hearing is kind of stuff that we've heard kind of come out, but this is the first time the taxi driver's really been quizzed, because it sort of emerges that he drops him off, there's an argument about payment, and then he suddenly starts to hear children running around and screaming, and for some bizarre reason he suddenly decides to drive off. And then waits 50 minutes until he decides to phone up the police.
So he was just a few metres away from the horrendous attack at Southport, which involved 3 young children being murdered and others being injured, and he just didn't ring the police.
No, I mean, I guess you don't know what you're going to do until you get into that situation, what you might well do, but he claims he just went into panic mode and took flight, and then he went and picked up another fare. I think he spoke to a mate, and then he said he thought, well, maybe I ought to call the police, and called the police then. And he apologised to the family today and said he was sort of out of order for doing this.
It's really interesting just to hear this testimony, and we're really building an even greater knowledge of what happened on that horrible day, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Nicolas Sarkozy, the former president of France. He's heading to jail.
Yes. Well, the French seem to have a bit of a problem keeping their leaders safe after they've stepped down. We've actually done a bit of a list of all of them. Obviously, there's Napoleon and Louis XIV, and Chirac and Le Pétain. All these French leaders have got into trouble. Now Sarkozy's joining that list, and he's been sentenced to 5 years in jail, but in a very French style. They've given him a month off to think about it, and before he has to do some hard time.
He's appealing it, but even if the appeal is successful, he'll still spend some time in prison. Seems to be the case.
And he's unrepentant. His head's held high. He says if he spends one night in jail, he won't care, and he doesn't feel like he's done the wrong thing.
And this is about a £37 million criminal conspiracy involving Gaddafi.
Yeah, so it's something to do with sort of gaining some money for his election bid. I think it's early 2000s, 2007, something like that. A couple of his aides had gone and tried to get some money out of Gaddafi, and Sarkozy clearly has been dragged into all of it, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about someone who's not having a good day either, although perhaps less seriously. This is Brooklyn Beckham, arguably the greatest photographer of our era. He has had a really bad time at the Ryder Cup course.
I know, I really shouldn't laugh at it, because this is like my worst nightmare. I play a little bit of golf, and the idea of going out and having lots of people, the world's media, looking at you as you have a bit of a mare on the golf course is just something that would make me sit up in the middle of the night. But he sure enough, he did that. He was playing a pro celebrity golf game before the Ryder Cup starts tomorrow, and so he went round and he was knocking the ball all over the place, put it out of bounds, lost a ball at one stage, was in the bunker and got loads of grief. But obviously this is the first thing he's not really excelled at, because he's got loads of grief about his cooking and the like. And
his photography of an elephant, which was just completely in the dark. A hostile crowd greeted the tattooed former photographer, Brooklyn 26, with a crescendo of boos as he hacked his way around the sprawling course. I feel they would do that with me. I've never played a round of golf in my entire life. And
maybe you could have a game with him. Maybe you could.
I think yes, Brooklyn. We found someone who's worse than you. Yes. Let's talk about a story we talked about actually a few days ago. This is the vinyl padded drink server, the tacky bar from Del Boy's flat in Peckham. It was meant to go for £600, but it went for a lot more than that.
Yeah, well, we were kind of amazed. We had the auction on in the office. Now I think we need to take a little bit of credit here, because I mean, obviously on this programme as well, we raised this auction, and the auctioneer was kind of thanked us for this, because it's the interest just went through the roof on it, and they two people just weren't willing to let it go and push the price up to 22 grand. And
£22,000. I mean, that is incredible.
Very kitsch, weird bit of bar.
But it's nonetheless, it's the one in Del Boy's flat. I mean, it's an iconic piece of television there. Yeah. And even with the fees to the auctioneers, the total price is £27,720. I mean, is there anything on TV or anything you've seen sort of growing up that you'd love to have?
I'm a little bit of a James Bond geek, so maybe something from those. I don't know, maybe like the Golden Gun, Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah.
But but I'm still not sure I'd paid £22,000 for it though.
I know what you mean. I'm a massive nut about Lyndon Johnson, which not many people are. No. But I went to his presidential library in Austin a couple of years ago, and they still had. He used to give out, pens that people would come to the White House, and they would give you a President of the United States pen, basically. And they still had the original pens that weren't given out. Oh, wow. And I mean, they dried up, but I have one of those at home, and it was literally from the 1960s. And I know it's really sad, but it's one of my sort of favourite possessions. So I think if I didn't pay £22,000 for it, but I did pay more than you would usually pay for a pen. So I think if people want this stuff and have the money,
is there much eBay trade on Lyndon Johnson?
I don't think there are many Lyndon Johnson. I got a few magnets and stuff as well. It's quite funny because I went into the gift shop 3 times and they're a bit like, haven't you bought everything here already? He's just a fascinating president. I don't think he's the best president. I don't think he's the worst president. He's just a fascinating person. There's a 4-volume biography. I've read every word of it. So there we are. Listen, thank you from Del Boy to Lyndon Johnson. Thanks very much, Will. As always, great to talk to you. That's Will Barker there. He's Deputy Head of News at The Sun. Lots of people getting in touch about digital IDs, which we'll come to in a minute or two. We're going to take more of your calls. Also, fish and chips. Are you covering the story, Will, about fish and chips, about the restriction on cod as well?
There's a little bit in there somewhere in the paper tomorrow.
Good stuff. Yeah, lots of people getting in touch. Anthony says, has Fergus ever heard of seagulls sitting outside fish and chip shops overlooking a harbour? I don't think so. James in Cardiff says, we are restricting our fishermen, but what are the French boats coming into our waters, and do we restrict them? Suze says, Octorard chip shop is a legend. We used to stop there on our way home from a day's skiing in Aviemore for 20 years. Beyond delicious. Happy days. And Robin Dorset says, how can they restrict British fishermen on cod quotas when, thanks to Starmer's foreign EU agreement, French and Spanish factory ships will empty the sea of fish over the next 12 years? That's Rob in Dorset. Lots more to come, including on Andy Burnham, including on digital IDs. We'll take your calls right up to 7 o'clock when Kevin O'Sullivan takes over. Lots to discuss here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Bessie, who says, Brooklyn Beckham, he's neither a celebrity nor a professional golfer. What on earth was he doing there anyway? And thank you to Nigel, who says, my wife and I had our first date at a fish and chip restaurant. After that, she was hooked. Yes, very good, Nigel. Thanks to everybody on Digital ID as well. Josh says, what will the government do if they find illegal immigrants under the Digital ID scheme? They're already really slow with a one-in, one-out scheme as it is. Another person says, if they want to stop migrants, they will put them in compounds and minimal benefits. If they want to control the population, then Digital ID. Nigel says, regarding Digital ID, I fail to see why the government think it will stop or reduce illegal immigration, as it will just issue anyone arriving at Digital ID, further eliminating the gap between illegals and nationals in the UK. Joanna in Salisbury says, Cardi P, fish stock. So how many are the French going to be controlled, and how much they catch? None, I should think. Only British fishermen will be reduced, I'm betting. No to digital IDs, says Gary. I'm sorry, but if a government can't govern their country and know how many people are living in it, or how many people are coming and going, then they ain't doing a good job, are they? I need a passport to have to go through customs just to go to France for a few days. Craig says, how come when Labour displays the cross of St George it's okay, but when anyone else does, they're right-wing thugs? Andy in Aberdeen says, I'm a bit worried about Andy Burnham. He says you can become Labour leader without it being your choice. Does that mean I'm in the running too? What a terrifying prospect, says Andy in Aberdeen. Andy, great line actually. A friend of mine had a little sister who was about 5 years old, and she was wondering why her school was closed because the election was on. And my friend said, like, you know, we've got to pick someone to run the schools, we've got to pick someone to run how the roads work and how the hospitals work. And the little 5-year-old girl says, I hope they didn't pick me. Some breaking news, 2 more illegal migrants have been returned to France under the one-in, one-out deal with the UK. That brings the total to 6 so far. We know, of course, that for every person sent back, an asylum seeker is going to be allowed to arrive here through a safe and legal route. Graham is in Kent and has some thoughts on digital ID. Graham, have you? What do you think? Do you think this is going to help solve the problem of illegal migration? We've just heard there that 2 more illegal migrants returned to France. What do you think, Graham?
Oh, I think, well, good evening, Peter. I think that's a joke, but that's another question. The other point about the digital ID is it's being sold to us as to battle illegal migration. How's that working out for France, Italy, and all the other European countries?
Very good point.
That already have ID.
Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense. Would you carry one? Would you have one on your phone, Graham?
It's a difficult one because I don't believe it is anything to do other than trying to control us. I mean, that's the only way that's the only way I feel about it. So I'd be against it, I think.
Okay, Graham, thanks for your thoughts there. Ivan says you don't need a new system, use what we have already. National insurance cards, driver's licenses, passport, you want to access anything, prove you belong. Gary says just look at China and how they use digital ID, total control. Yes, this whole sort of social credit system. We'll talk more about digital ID in a second, but Matt's on the line about Andy Burnham. Just before we speak to Matt, just remind ourselves about what Andy Burnham said to BBC Radio Manchester this morning about becoming leader of the Labour Party.
MPs were in touch with me, but let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform.
Andy Burnham there speaking to BBC Radio Manchester earlier today. Matt is in Cheshire and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Hi, Matt.
One of my first ever calls to talk was about Andy Burnham, and I was basically saying that he's actually quite shocking, and all we ever hear about him is these myths that have been built up by the BBC. That interview itself was at the BBC. He spends more time at Media City in Salford than he does solving problems in Greater Manchester. So his entire image is manufactured by those who know nothing of his record or the area. If you're a pro-Palestine activist, a trans activist, a rich footballer, a student whose mum and dad live in Oxfordshire, or an illegal immigrant that likes doing drugs in public, you'll probably like Andy Burnham. But if you're a long-term resident of Stockport, Wigan, Bolton, Rochdale or Tameside, you will know he's actually done nothing for your area and only cares about the city itself.
It is interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I've been in Manchester city centre and there are loads of people clearly on drugs. They're clearly on drugs like spice, for example, where you're in this sort of zombie-like state. Now, I know that there have been initiatives to try to sort this out. Manchester is a great city. It's a nice city. There are many bits of it, I think, that are better than London, for example, and I feel perhaps safer than there than I do in London. But from Andy Burnham's perspective and the thought that he's this sort of amazing politician who's done a brilliant job, I just don't subscribe to that, Matt.
No, it's a complete misnomer, Peter. I mean, they don't forget the city itself. He's the mayor of Greater Manchester,
yeah, correct,
not the member of city centre Manchester.
Yeah.
And he's basically done nothing whatsoever for anybody outside the city limits. He's basically Gary Neville's friend, and all they do is hobnob around building socialist towers for this sort of big... I think there's even a project known as Little Islington, which tells you all you need to know.
Well,
it was actually
I think it does. Matt, listen, thanks. Good to talk to you. That's Matt in Cheshire there. If you're in that area, if you're in the area that is Andy Burnham's domain, what do you think? Do you think he's been a good mayor? 0344 499 1000. On digital IDs, loads of people getting in touch. Let's take a few more calls on that. Bill is in Renfrewshire in Scotland. Bill, what's your perspective on this? You're very welcome to the programme.
I thank you for taking my call. I've followed you for a wee while about digital ID cards. As a past veteran, I don't mind carrying an ID card as long as it's not an active digital ID card. Mm-hmm. It's got to be passive. If somebody wants to know who I am, I don't mind saying who I am. It's up to them then to look out the information that they hold on me.
Yes.
Not for me to give it to them.
Yes.
And if I'm given an active ID card, then I shall make every effort to neutralise the information that's on the card itself and still carry the card.
Yeah, it's interesting in regard to that digital ID. What is the difference? I mean, there is a clear difference, obviously, but what is your resistance to digital ID specifically, to that active form of ID?
As you have said in the past, the amount of information that they're willing to hold upon me is regressive, absolutely regressive.
Yes.
I'm happy to give information that they want as long as they ask me, not to have it on demand, at their demand.
Well, Bill, it's a really interesting point you make there, because the whole point of data protection, and I'm thinking back years on this, was, I mean, I studied at school and things like that as part of sort of computer studies and things like that. The whole point is when an organisation holds information on you, it's meant to be limited to the specific purpose that they hold it for. Your doctor, for example, shouldn't be holding information about anything that's not relevant to your health, for example. It shouldn't, if you're banned from driving, that shouldn't be something that, unless it's a health issue, it shouldn't be something that your doctor knows. My worry, and I think perhaps yours is too, is putting it all together, having it all in one place, and anybody in officialdom being able to identify that. And I just don't trust large institutions and the government. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's simply straightforwardly they cannot be trusted with our information because there are so many data leaks.
I quite agree with you, absolutely. You cannot trust these people to be able to be able not to prevent information leaking out. I mean, there have been too many leaks already in the past.
Yeah.
That data leaks, and it's terribly sorry about that. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, who amongst us has not received an email from some sort of company as well, often quite large and important companies, saying, oh yeah, you've got to change your password because there's been a data leak. I've received those, and yeah, I've changed my password and I've done what I had to do, but it doesn't make me confident that my data is not with someone who shouldn't have it. Bill, you make a lot of really good points there. Thanks for them, thanks for your call, and thanks for your loyalty to the station as well. Tarquin's in London and has some thoughts on digital ID. Tarquin, go ahead.
Afternoon, Peter. Yeah,
Hi
I think this whole thing about this digital ID, as somebody quite rightly said before, it's a solution, it's a problem in search of a solution, all that crap. Basically, Blair's been after this for a very, very long time. This is his baby. He wants to do this because it's part of his new Labour. It's his coup de grace before he checks out, that man. He's wanted this for a long time. It's reminiscent of the track and trace to 18 billion or whatever crazy amount.
Do you mean test and trace? Track and trace is the Royal Mail one.
Thank you.
Which is less sinister.
Yes,
it's just about finding parcels.
So in other words, government implemented IT projects, a bit like the post office project. Utter Fujitsu will be rolling it out in the background. They'll have to get sued. And also, it's discriminatory. If you're a blind person, how are you supposed to? You don't even have a smartphone.
Yeah.
So I recommend that all the disabled people who are going to have trouble with sue them through the human rights legislation and make sure they don't get this. This is nauseating, Peter.
Yeah, listen, Tarquin, I think a lot of people are going to agree with you on your points. I think they're good ones. Tarquin in London there, thanks to Dan and Kent as well. He says, credit to Cardi P and the team for getting in fantastic equal debate and huge public equal opinion. Thank you, says Dan. Well, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. And yes, the team has been working very hard behind the scenes today. Loads of calls coming in. We'll get more of them on in just a second. Just a reminder that 2 more illegal migrants have been returned to France under the one-in, one-out deal with the UK, bringing the total to 6 so far. But digital IDs are really what you want to talk about. Tarquin there talking about what about blind people. Well, Tristan's given us a call about this. He's in Southend. Tristan, very good to talk to you. This has been your experience.
Hello, Peter. Good afternoon. I look forward to listening to your new book, Political Animals.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very welcome. So in relation to this, I'm fully blind now because I lost my eyesight a couple of weeks back. Now, the only thing they're going to do, I guarantee it, they're going to invent some very expensive item that we'll have to purchase as blind people ourselves, like an iPhone of some description, that will cost a fortune. Because it's such a limited market for blind people, it's beyond a joke. I'll give you an example. This week I need a new keyboard for my computer. It's going to set me about £200.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money indeed. So that's my taxi fares out the window for a month. So I'm practically trapped in the house. So what I would say is, they need to think this through for people with disabilities. It's not going to work for some people. It's really not.
Tristan, listen, thanks for that point. Listen, I promised you I would send you a PDF of the book because I know you can have it read out to you. Would you send me your email address, actually, and make sure we get that sorted? Is that okay? Oh, he's gone.
Thank you.
Is that all right, Tristan? You'll do that?
Thank you.
Yeah, good man. All right, thanks, Tristan. Good to talk to you. And Kevin O'Sullivan is with us. He's here after 7. And there's an awful lot to talk about, including digital ID. Loads of people want to talk about that.
Yeah, we've sort of regrouped because this has obviously cropped up today. I mean, it's been waiting in the wings, but now it's been confirmed. And I think everybody's rather shocked. I mean, you know, this is the beginning of Britain's Papers, Please society. You know, this is a Soviet-style crackdown on our liberty. You know, Tony Blair wants this, and I hear the sound of Tony Blair whispering in Keir Starmer's ear here. So that Tony Blair has finally got what he's always wanted, which is for us all to be kind of shackled by identity cards, like you used to have in Eastern Europe and everything. Now, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it'll help solve the migrant crisis. No, it won't, because what it will...
Well, loads of places that already have ID cards haven't solved the migrant crisis already. So show us the country that has ID cards that solved this.
Yeah, what it will do, it will engender a very healthy and lucrative forgery trade. It's once again, it's tin-eared by Keir Starmer, because people don't like this. You don't have to do this. Why are you doing it? It's just going to make him even more unpopular. This is coming. So obviously we're going to talk about that, and I hope people are as angry about it as I am. Julia Hartley-Brewer is saying she just simply won't have one. Well, that's my impulse as well, but we're not going to have a choice. It'll be the law.
Yes.
You know, and you'll have to have it installed on your phone in a government.uk wallet app, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm appalled. I reel back in horror at this idea, but if it's the law, we'll have to do it. You know, Starmer, just leave us alone.
Well, Tristan, who was just on the line there, he's blind. I mean, how is he going to update these things? How are they going to, you know, make sure that everybody has equal access to it? There are loads of people, not just older people, people of all ages, who don't have smartphones, who don't want a smartphone, for example. You know, people trying to get their kids away from smartphones.
It's a really good point. You know, my parents, God rest their souls, I mean, mobile phones were anathema to them. They just thought they were newfangled gadgets that they wanted nothing to do with. And there's a lot of people around like like that. As you say, not necessarily old people.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, you have a right not to have a mobile phone.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
How is it going to work practically? That's another issue. Also, we're talking about the asylum seeker holiday. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
It is absurd, absolutely absurd.
And also, this is the good one, you know, because I like to do serious stories. You know that Nigel Farage says that migrants are going into the parks and stealing